You had ISIS members try to come after you here in Texas.
FBI called me and said, hey, just wanted to notify you that ISIS is actively recruiting to kill you. I've been going all over the world trying to find these people, and you're telling me they're about to come to Texas? I just dumped my address on live television on Fox. FBI was pissed. My wife was pissed. Fox News was like, did you just do that? There's nothing more dangerous than a young man without purpose, direction, motivation.
I want to share a quick business tip that I've been thinking a lot about lately. It's eliminate, automate, delegate. So if you do tasks in that order in your business, it runs more smoothly. I'm always looking for tools to help eliminate tasks, then automate them, and then finally delegate those that are absolutely necessary. One of those tools is Riverside. Not only can it record 4K video and audio remotely to make sure your podcast quality is top notch, but it's also drastically improved my team's editing speed with the text-based editor. Transcribes your footage, removes silences in one click, and creates these short clips just by selecting the text. Even better, if you make a mistake, which we try not to do, you can delete the sentence and the transcript will delete it from your video instantly. So Riverside has an in-platform editor where you can upload your own content too. So it's not just footage recorded on Riverside that gets the special treatment. So how do people find new podcasts? Often from seeing clips, right? You see a bunch of mine. Riverside gets this, and that's why I like their AI magic clips. Analyzes moments in your podcast that have the most potential to get traction online. That saves hours of listening to your podcast for the 5th time to find the perfect clip. Riverside's got you covered. We're always trying to remove, automate, not add, and complicate. But don't waste your time doing what Riverside can do for you. I got you guys a deal. If you want to try it for yourself, get the Riverside link in the description and use the code CODY for an exclusive discount, just for y'all.
Get started today.
This podcast today is for you men out there who are tired of being told you are weak, entitled Zoomers and gamers with no ability to be a quote-unquote real man. From women telling you you're not enough to society telling you you are too much. From courts telling you dads are less important than moms, I see you. When I look at the men in my life, that is just not the case. And I think the world is starting to wake up to this. And for you women wanting strong partnerships and with men in your life like mine, this episode just hits different. So today, we're going to do a couple things. One is we're going to focus on becoming a man in a world that's afraid to be one. 2, marriage, parenting, and education in a way society tells you to never do. 3, becoming hard to kill in every sense of the word. And 4, building businesses, best-selling books that mean something while also making millions. Welcome to the Big Deal podcast. Contrarian idea of the week. It's a little bit different here because I think the truth is people don't often want you to win. They don't want you to be harder to kill. They want you poor, weak, and needy. They want to keep you down so your neck is easier to step on. How they keep you poor forever is the secret you have to unlock. And what if it actually has not a ton to do with money? So my husband is a former Navy SEAL and one of the hardest men I've ever known. And somebody once said to him, excellence is just deviance spelled differently. You will never achieve greatness being like everybody else, only by being different, a deviant. So today, we're going to talk to a man who has challenged the world day after day in every arena he could find. We're going to push back on them making us a nation of serfs, and we are going to do it by seeking greatness. From a little spark may burst a mighty flame. The spark in this man today led him to kick people's faces in as the UFC champion and likely future Hall of Famer, master pain as a Special Forces Green Beret, write a best-selling book, Scars and Stripes, build a bunch of businesses like Sheepdog Response, education businesses, training, jiu-jitsu, gear companies, and even go behind enemy lines to Afghanistan, Ukraine, Israel, when our leaders and country wouldn't save our allies. He saved them himself. A man I consider a friend and someone I look up to, Tim Kennedy.
Bring the band in.
Talking about young men today. You posted a video that I loved, and the video is about a lake and a young man jumping in, beating open the back of a Jeep to save an 83-year-old and a dog, which was an incredible video. But what I thought was even better was your commentary on young men today. What do you think about young men today? Are they weak and helpless?
I think every generation looks at the next generation and, they're disparaging them. They're throwing stones at them. Like you lived the greatest generation from World War II. Imagine the things that they said post-World War II. Like you missed the big one. You missed the war. Like where were you? Were you climbing cliffs? Were you storming beaches? Were you planting flags on top of mountains? And then Korea happened. World War II veterans are like, rah, rah, rah. And then Vietnam happens. So there's always these obstacles that the next generation faces. And the one that we're facing right now is one that we've never fought before. Technology, AI, complacency, entitlement. We're living in the most prosperous era of American history. I really believe that suffering is the best thing that can happen to a young person. And we haven't had a lot of opportunity for suffering. You're not rising to the occasion. You're not overcoming these challenges. It's just been really good. And these really nice, wonderful times have created what seem like soft young men, and we need tough men. We're having a hard time right now with not just young men, but young people recognizing that suffering and hardship is good, and that the byproduct of going through hard things is growth.
What I think is interesting about you is you went from being maybe how you would have described yourself in your book and other podcasts that I've listened to you on. You went from being somebody that in many ways was a lost young man, you know, drugs, alcohol, bad decisions. You completely changed, but not before being at like one of your darkest moments. A lot of young people today, you know, when you hear your parents say, back in my day when I went to school, we hiked both ways uphill in the snow, right? It's like, you don't understand. You don't get me. You don't know where I was. You don't understand what it's like today, Dad. And yet you're maybe one of the more vulnerable people that I've ever met who's incredibly strong and tough right now. As much as you feel comfortable sharing, you know, will you talk about where you were maybe on like a, you know, very cold day out in the ocean in California, and then what happened to change that moment?
Yeah, for me to get to my low point was not entitlement, but easy. Like I had great, amazing parents, great, amazing grandparents. You know, I'm living in the Central Coast of California. The hardships that I was going through were almost not fabricated, but curated. Whether it was wrestling or boxing or, you know, going to do these kind of epic events like going on overseas missions trips, they were controlled, right? They weren't real. And then you lose a friend in a car crash, like that's real. You know, then your grandpa dies, that's real. Then you start experiencing the consequences of your bad decisions, unprotected sex, or somebody walks into your office and it's like, hey, I might have HIV, you know, having 2 different women that are pregnant. And these, you know, these are byproducts of my choices. There's nothing more dangerous than a young man without purpose, direction, motivation. That's the definition of leadership in the military, is to provide purpose, direction, and motivation. And then you look at young men that lack that, and you look at me specifically, lacking what am I supposed to be doing, how am I supposed to be doing it, and why am I supposed to be doing it? And you see something very dangerous, which is a young man without purpose. A young man with purpose, I'm going to cross an ocean, I'm going to climb a cliff, I'm going to kill everybody from me until I free them. That is a young man with purpose. We're going through the worst economic disaster in maybe the history of mankind, and we build the largest industrial revolution to become the most prosperous country on the planet. That is young men with purpose. Then you look at a young 20-year-old idiot not thinking about anything but himself. The consequences of a lot of these decisions are kind of all of the fruit is coming to bear, and I'm scared. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, walking into the water. In Christianity, the baptism is a proclamation of your faith. And the process of it is they take you and they dunk you underwater, and you come back out rinsed of what was into something that is new. And I'm not like getting philosophical, like I needed to have this baptism, but what I needed to have was a change, and that was the catalyst. So I walked into the water in Morro Bay, California, took off all my clothes, and swam due west into the fog. There was no sadness, there was no depression, there was just frustration, there was lack of direction, and so I just kept swimming until I was in the middle of nothingness with no idea which way shore was, treading water in that super freezing central northern California coast water, hoping that I could figure out which way shore was. Yeah. Young men without purpose.
Do you remember it still vividly, or does that feel like a lifetime ago?
No, I remember the sounds, I remember the smells, I remember everything, I remember the feeling. Hilariously, just a couple of weeks ago, me and Travis Pastrana jumped out of a helicopter into the Gulf of Mexico. We get in the water, the moment that we splash, we're looking at the wind, which was an onshore wind, usually an indicator of current direction. Where we entered the water, that was not the direction of the current, which was going out into the Gulf. So the moment we get in there, we're treading water, we're swimming against the current. He's like, we're getting pushed further out. I'm like, yeah, we are. What should we do? And he's a great surfer. He's a great swimmer. He's like, let's swim along the shore for a while and see if we can find a different current direction. So we started swimming, and then ultimately turned 90 degrees back to shore and had a little bit more success. But the moment that you get in that water and you see the shore getting further away, there's a feeling inside of you which is like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. Man, I remember that feeling in the water. I remember in Morro Bay just being a young man without purpose. Just keep swimming, just keep swimming. You could not swim and you go into the drink, you go into the darkness, and that's the end. Or you just keep swimming and maybe there's hope at the end of this.
This generation of young people in general, but, just to stay on men for a second, when I go out and speak to them, and I watch somebody like you and Jordan Peterson do it, it does seem like that word hope is missing a lot. I remember I was having a conversation with the University of Austin, Dean Pano, and I was like, I wanted to teach all these young people about buying businesses and financial freedom and how do you structure a deal. So I was asking him, should we talk about seller financing in tandem with, equity financing rounds? And he's like, if you want to teach them the one thing that they need more than anything else, you need to teach them hope. And I kind of, as a spreadsheet junkie, thought that sounded fluffy, but yet I think it might be true. I know you've talked about this in many ways and most of your businesses substantiate it, but what do you say to the youth of today or to whisper in the ear of young Tim Kennedy for those that feel hopeless?
Yeah. In my era, if you told me to run up a hill and kill everybody at the top of the hill, that's the end of what you need to tell me. Go up that hill, destroy what's on the top. Got it. Task condition standard, I'm off. This time, this generation, when I'm talking to young soldiers that are wanting to go and do and be something, the two things I have to provide to them are hope. What is the end result of this? It's such a complex thing that needs to be communicated as a leader to this generation is the reason why. One, why is it important to them specifically? And then second is the end state, the hope. We are going to go and defend this spot because it does this thing for all of these other people. For the Alamo, they went to the Alamo and fought there and died there for the hope of a Texas. I'm storming this beach. I'm climbing this cliff. I'm planting this flag for the hope of defeating imperialism, fascism, right? And they're going to do it, period. End story. That same kind of requirement for hope exists with these same young men. It's interwoven in our DNA. Why will I be a provider? Why will I be a protector? It's because I hope that I'm going to be able to make a better future for my family, for my wife, for my kids, for my country, God, family, country, friends, for those things. I'm doing this act because the byproduct of it is hope. Existentially, that's a difficult thing to break down and explain and convey, but it is so necessary.
So when you have young people come in here that are not preconditioned to be warriors, let's say, they don't have much money, they're kind of happy-ish with their life, maybe not really happy, they don't know a general direction, and let's say you got to tell them, I wish you would do these couple things for the next 30 days, or I wish you would ponder this. Is there something that's accessible? Because half of these young people don't want to eat meat, more or less go murder a human, right? And so what's the Tim Kennedy, hey, I get that you're not me, but if you were just starting, here's somewhere you could start that might just change your life with a very few small actions compounded.
It's doing something hard.
Yeah.
That's first. And that's going to be different for everybody. And I'm not going to throw stones at where you start.
Yeah.
Maybe for some people, not playing a video game, getting up and walking around the block is hard. They've been eating potato chips and pounding Mountain Dews for a while, a little overweight. Man, I love you. It's fine. Your starting point is going to be different than someone else's starting point. It doesn't matter. But go and do something hard.
Every day.
Every day. And that hard thing's going to change. I love it when Chris comes and hangs out because we're two diabolical minds. They're are we shooting? Are we grappling? Are we cold plunging? Are we swimming? How am I going to strangle or choke or drown each other? That's a clear byproduct of us having done hard things for a long time, both in business, physically, academically. I want to be challenged intellectually. Go do something hard. One. Two is do something for someone else. That might be hard. It might not be hard. It might be really self-serving and feel good. But when you do something for someone else and you voluntarily put yourself through suffering, it transforms your mind and body in a better way.
Today we were at a coffee shop, right? And the guy in the front of the coffee shop was like, oh, I know Tim Kennedy. You know what? He came in here. He bought coffee, he said hi, we got to know each other, and then he just did a video about my business, and like not for anything, and just told everybody to come to my location. And for you, you have two muscles that are very big now. And one muscle is the hard muscle, where something that seems hard for somebody else is probably pretty normal for you. And the second is the giving muscle, where like it must give you some sense of joy. Every time I hang out with you guys, I remember the first time I met some of you, I was like, you guys are really nice and you're offering a lot of like connections and like, what's going on? Why are you doing this? Because that wasn't my sphere before. But you think if you're unhappy, two things, hard and give. Start there daily.
That's right.
Why do you think so many people struggle? Why do so many people not do hard? Why do so many people not achieve their dreams? And you have so many friends that are ultra high performers. What's the difference?
Bedros actually systematically in a process of his life, he forces himself for 6 weeks at a time to do something that he's not good at. Rock climbing, jiu-jitsu, learning how to do an Ironman. It is part of his program of life to go for 6 weeks and do something that he's not good at. They also dedicate a portion of all of their money to go back into giving. Sometimes they're giving about things that they very much care about. Sometimes it's things that just benefit the community. They do those two things, something hard, and then in some form or fashion, selflessly giving to people. If the people around me if I'm giving to them and they're still around me, I benefit from that. I don't mean to make it selfish, but that act of selflessness of me giving something to my neighbor to make my neighbor a little bit happier and healthier, that will make me happier and healthier. But the act of me giving to them selflessly without any expectation of receiving something in return makes me a better person. And it also forces me to be able to produce more so I can give more. And if I give more, I then start producing more. But if that's happening in conjunction with me forcing myself to do hard, challenging things through the acts of suffering, I then even start producing more. And it's just this like endless cycle of me being able to be a better version of being able to give and provide for more. And then like, where's the limit to that?
Yeah, there isn't one.
There isn't one. That's right.
Which makes sense because in every other week you're in a different country doing X, Y, and Z. And yet, you keep refueling your tank. And I also think it lends to the people that you attract. When you are a giver and when you do hard things, you just attract a different level of human. I remember we were chatting about your wife, and I was like, I can't wait to meet her. And you kind of raised one eyebrow, and you go, the thing is, she's tough. She is a badass woman. You were like, she's maybe the most badass woman I've ever met. And it makes sense that you can do such badass things because you have a support system of, we're sitting in your office right now and you're like, Delta, SEAL Team 6, Ranger, everybody in here is a 001%. And so it makes sense that your wife would be too. You told me a story about her that I loved, that I don't know if you're willing to share, about a bar, a stiletto heel, and a dude.
That's right.
Do you remember that story?
Yeah, there was love at first sight when she walked onto a unit in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, that you can't walk onto without serious clearance. So she walked on, and I was like, that's a Russian spy. There's just no chance that human is here. If you're at Fort Bragg and the ratio of men to women is 9-1. And the next time I see her is at this bar in Fayetteville, North Carolina. She would just go with her friends. They wanted to be left alone. They just wanted to listen to live music. There's not a lot of great places to listen to live music in a military town. So she's sitting there listening to this music, and she gets up to walk to the bar to get a drink. And there's this ramp that goes from the live music floor up to where the bar is. And this guy wanted her attention, and she was not wanting to give anyone attention because she just wanted to go back to her seat and be left alone. I know this because I went up and talked to her, and that gives an indication that she talked back. That's not what happened. I started talking to her, and she just started turning, and I'd remove to try to talk to her more. It's just turn again, and then ultimately she just walked away like I was never talking to her. And it's really awkward. I was like, anyways. So I knew what this poor young man was experiencing as he was trying to get her attention, and she didn't care. She was walking up with these stilettos up this ramp. So he reached out and did the worst thing that he possibly can do, which is touch her. There was no consent. There's no indication I would like you to touch my leg. So he just reached up to get her attention, and when it touched her leg, I could see there was this electric shock that went into him. I got her attention. Electricity, especially in direct current, it travels in one direction. And that was from her to him, which ended up being her balancing on the foot that he had touched and her taking her stiletto and stabbing him in his arm to get him to release her leg. And then she just walked up to order her beer. And it was
incredible.
Yeah. It was electrical shock to my heart. Immediate love. It's like, must have that one.
That is so good. Yeah. Also, I think probably a lot of young men see you today and they're like, of course, Tim's wife, he got this badass woman who's beautiful and, kids and also really tough. But when you told me what you had to do to get her attention, you took maybe more face punches in that than you did in the UFC. Like, what was the story about how you finally got her to say yes to even a date?
She didn't say yes.
I know.
One, I had to figure out her pattern of life. If you try to do this to my daughters, I will find you and I'll wear your skin as a birthday suit. I'm being super clear here. Like, this is stalking. But in 2005, this is okay behavior for a special forces guy in a special forces town. So, like, I had to figure out who her friends were. I had to figure out where she worked. I had to find out, like, what she liked to do. And I found all of this out from her friends, which I was slowly starting to befriend as I was building the network of people around her. So this sounds so bad when you say it like
so good.
Once I made friends with all of her friends, I created an event knowing the things that she likes: music, food, wine. So we're going to do this live music wine pairing at my kind of historic house downtown Fayetteville. And I told all of the friends different times than what she was told. She was told a time to the left, and they were told time a little bit later to the right. And so when she showed up 20, 30 minutes late to her time, it was still 20, 30 minutes before anybody else was going to show up. And this was like the Razor 3 flip phone era, where you had to hit, like, if you wanted the letter C, you'd hit the letter 2 3 times, A, B, C. Oh, yeah. So I had saved a draft of a text message to go out to all of the friends simultaneously, like, hey, dinner's canceled, I'll see you guys later, because I knew that when she got there early, I had a reservation made at an Italian restaurant downtown, and our first date happened when she shows up. And I was like, things like fell through for a whole bunch of people, and like I'll just take you out to dinner. And I don't know why she said yes, but she said yes. And from that day until the day I left for Iraq, on my first real combat deployment, I took her out on a date every single day from that day until I went overseas. And then when I was overseas, I had somebody follow her to make sure she was a good woman.
No red lights outside of her house while you were gone?
Or, like,
not a Russian spy.
Not a Russian spy, and when she says, hey, I'm going to be just with you. Okay.
Let's see.
Let's see.
Trust but verify. Uh-huh. Also a Russian proverb, actually. Mm-hmm. What's incredible is in this day and age, this is the opposite of what we're taught to do. Like, I miss the Tinder, Bumble era with Chris, thank God. But what are we taught to do? We're taught dating is a numbers game. Swipe, 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 swipe. And if you go on 1,000 of them, then you will have a high probability of finding another person. But quite opposite in business, right? You would never say, the goal is just like call 1,000 people. You would say, know who you sell, find them, and predisposed people who already want what you're going to buy and sell them really well. And so I think it's actually a beautiful reminder of you can opt out of actually the virtual, awful, soul-sucking world of swiping left and swiping right. And you did exactly that.
I don't think there's anything less conducive than finding a person that you want to spend time with than, one, just the physical features that you see on their phone, two, the access to that person via technology. Why did young men have to leave their village at puberty to go and find their spouse? Because you couldn't spread your seed with people that lived in your village because you guys were genetically too similar. So the act of leaving your village to go to find someone else's village, like, one, there's sometimes war that happens between those two villages, bears, tigers, who knows what's between the two of these two places. It's hard. It's supposed to be hard. There's supposed to be like this beautiful ballet of violence to attract that spouse, to attract your other. And there's something really rewarding. I mean, I'm just speaking from my perspective and my wife expressing this, to being pursued. It is really sexy. It's really fulfilling to know that their man they'll pursue them. To this day, I pursue my wife. Fight for a date. Fight for, like, can we get coffee? Fight for, hey, your mom's coming into town, I'm taking you to Paris. Fight for, insert all the things so she knows that she's being pursued.
The bar for pursuing has actually never been lower. because you used to have to do wild things to get a woman to pay attention to you, right? You know, you'd have to ask her father if you could even take her out. You would have to get through a slew of brothers potentially and friends. You'd have to do group dates where you couldn't go by yourself. And so while simultaneously the optionality has never been higher, and so we feel like it's harder than ever to date, in some ways it might be easier than ever to stand out as a young man. But important to hear for people who feel like there aren't women anywhere, for this new incel movement. It's like, really, if you focus on you becoming the best version of yourself and actually pursuing a woman, you might have a much higher likelihood of success than you could ever imagine.
Find values that in the person that you want to spend time with, and then the activities that are around those values, you can find those people there. Like, you want an active person? Cool, go and do some active hobbies. Like, go and canoe or hike or join a running club or go to CrossFit or go to like insert jiu-jitsu, like any kind of active activity, and you're going to find a ton of people that share that value. Any spiritual thing, go to that type place of worship and then get actively, selflessly serving in that. And like, lo and behold, you're going to see tons of people of the opposite sex that are there with the same values, with the same reasons, with the same spirituality or activity, or just sit there at a bar with your friends and swipe.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and then talk to me about how unhappy you are.
It's so true. Especially if you're a woman, jiu-jitsu is an incredible place to go. Dude. The ratio there's got to be like, what, 95 to 5% or less?
We have a huge woman jiu-jitsu community here.
Yeah.
Our Wednesday night women's only classes, there's like 30, 40 women here. We have a Sunday open mat, and it's just women. I'll like walk in here to like clean up something in the back. I won't even make eye contact with the girls out on the mats. They'll just like tear my face off. Here, I bet it's like 70, 80%.
But it's still huge.
Still huge.
Yeah.
And the men are hardworking, you know, they're tough.
Women, shooting fish in a barrel, jiu-jitsu class. Yeah. That's where you should go, dudes. I want to talk about becoming hard to kill. Yeah. And, you know, you texted my husband one night, late at night, something along the lines of, you know, do you have a passport? Can you have a bag and be ready to go to X location, which I won't say, which is a war zone? Yeah. And I said,
sorry about that,
Tim. No, I didn't. I really support him in never leaving the fact that he is always going to be a warrior behind. Yeah. And if he ever feels the need to call, I will support that. But one of the things I find fascinating about you is you do this a lot. And you were sitting in this huge office. You don't need monetarily to go and put yourself in harm's way. You know, you have all these businesses, you have an incredible family, and yet you feel some driving need, and maybe the world feels that need in return. Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep going to war zones?
Well, I'm not a hypocrite, and I said the two things that you have to do is do something hard, which I do every day, and then find ways to give back to others. How you give, Dan, man, he does a toy drive. He raised millions. I think it was $1 million something worth of toys. It was more than that. I don't even know how much it was. Like, broke the record for the number of toys that they gave. Like, he's good at that. Yeah. I'm not good at that. What am I going to, I go out and do toy drive. Like, I'll have like a little bucket and people can drop things in there.
There'd just be a lot of knives.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, but if you're on a missions trip in Haiti and there's a coup, you're stuck and you want to get home to your family and you're scared, you think that this new rebel militia is going to come into your missionary camp and rape all the young girls that are there from your church, who's going to come and get you? Like, people like your husband are. People that have been given the skill and the drive to be able to protect people and now have the trade craft to go and do it. There's not a lot of people that can walk into a conflict area, a non-permissive war zone, and feel comfortable there. We know a lot of those people that can do that. Every time my phone rings for Save Our Allies, General so-and-so says, hey, we have a problem. There's not currently like a diplomatic or military solution, but there is like an NGO opportunity. Do you think you and your organization could slip in with our support? And everything that we do, I think people look at Instagram and they're like, oh, these cowboys. If you think that I can walk into Afghanistan during the middle of the evacuation without DOD and DOS support, like, you're a crazy person. If you think that we're going to be in Djibouti or Sudan during a coup, like, you're a crazy person without the support of the American government.
Not to mention you're active.
Yeah.
Which I didn't even realize.
Yeah. Well, like, I don't talk about a lot of that stuff because I'm assuming that people will figure out that there are systems and processes that we operate under. Yeah. Like, I'm not throwing on a cowboy hat and be like, oh, I'm going to go to Afghanistan and rescue people. It's going to be like, there's a specific need and a requirement that has to be filled, and we with a group of people are able to do this and help. I do it because it's my version of giving. And I think it makes me a better person and a better business partner and a better colleague and a better husband.
Will you ever stop?
No.
Ever?
Nope.
Do you like it?
No, it's like the worst thing ever.
Explain that.
Like being in Israel after the attack. Like I know Israel's like a trigger. That's regardless of what side you are. But I'll just tell you, you get there after October 7th and you see the hollowness in the eyes as the reports of what happened, the villages immediately adjacent that were attacked. It's horrific. Like you go to Afghanistan during the evacuation in August of 2021, there's nothing good anywhere. Like you can't look in any direction and see a happy story. Sudan or Haiti or Ukraine. Like I don't care where your political allegiances are. There are people that are suffering. The only people profiting are the people that make the things that kill both sides, and they sell to both sides. But there's people that need help, and I can't not do it. You know, if I'm at the mall or I'm at church with my family, and I start hearing gunshots, first thing I'm doing is getting my family off the X, right? Like they're going to get in the car, they're going to be gone. There's not a chance in hell that I'm not watching that car drive away and I'm turning around and running back in. Does that mean I like doing it? No. But that means I have to do it and I was made to do it. Yeah. And there's lots of people that were built that way, that were made that way, and then learned to be that way.
I think what's incredible too is finding, you know, if you carve away the layers of easy and complacent and prescribed, finding that probably a lot more people are made to do these hard things than we think. And that's beautiful.
I think almost all of us are. That is very intuitive of you to recognize when, like, all of these smoke and mirrors to the 2024 world that we're living in, when you start pulling back the entitlement and you start pulling back that I can, you know, Uber Eats and have something delivered to my door, there are still the same species that carved their existence out of the wilderness. The same group of people that are sitting here in this country today are descendants of people that were told they had to pay a tax on a hot beverage, and they're like, nah, so they pushed it into the harbor, and then because they pushed it in the harbor, somebody got shot in Boston, the shot that was heard around the world, and then we killed everybody that was on the other side until they left the continent. Like, that is our heritage. Yep. And every single one of us are descendants of that. We all have it. It just hasn't been, you know, cultivated.
Yeah, 100%. We were with a couple of girlfriends this past weekend, and it was the first time she was shooting a gun. You see this because you have, you know, protector courses for women with Sheepdog Response that are incredible, that I've had a bunch of friends go through. And watching a woman for the first time, like her face, the fear, the guilt, the like a little bit of shame of holding it, the am I going to hurt somebody else, which is typically what I see on women's faces. It's not even I might hurt myself. It's like, what if I hurt somebody else? And then when she finally shot it, not actually a release on the first shot, I don't know what you usually see, but like kind of scared. Yeah. And then having to shoot a bunch of them until she thought, oh, like I feel a little bit safe. I feel like I could handle this. Is actually so beautiful. And, you know, women were warriors too. And so I think you do an incredible job of pushing people towards that.
The transformation that happens in these walls
yeah.
in 2 days. Like when women come on a Friday, they get like a situational awareness class. They start learning like all the things that they have in them are beautiful things that have to be harvested and cultivated and encouraged. I park under the light, you know, because I'm fearful. I'm like, that's fantastic. You should always park under the light. You know, like you're so sweet. We're walking to the coffee shop. You're like, hey, do you want the seat? I'm like, no, I can see the door from here, and you can see the door too. You know, like, but you are seated in the exact seat that you should be seated in. In 2 days. Watching that same fear of like, can I hold this gun? Can I do this fighting thing? Can I get this guy off of me? As like one of, you know, Yako Khalili, Special Forces.
He's a stud.
He is a stud. He's a frightening human. What a gentle giant too.
How come all the scary guys are the nice ones?
If you are intimately familiar with violence and you are capable of violence, the less you have to prove and the less amount of violence you have to do to ever be successful at anything. In law enforcement, the more trained and capable somebody is, the less amount of violence they ever have to do. I use Chantry or Travis, they're Austin PD guys, both monsters, both like professional fighters, both great shooters, never have to tase someone ever, never have to pepper spray anyone ever, never have to hurt someone ever to get them in cuffs. And they are the most violently capable people. You know, my family will never know the amount of violence I've done to understand like how soft and gentle I am to them. You know, like my kids have never seen a harsh hand out of anger or out of fear or an ego position. If there's harshness, it's out of love and wanting them to be a better people. But you're 100% right. Like, these monsters out there are the nicest people on the planet.
Yeah.
And it's because they're capable of doing so much. Jordan Peterson talks extensively about a man being pushed to his absolute limits. He should be capable of doing violence. And he's a good person because he chooses to be kind. Like, if you're not capable of hurting somebody and you don't hurt somebody, that doesn't mean you're good. It just means you're useless. But if I'm able to take your face off, but I choose to be kind and gracious and giving and selfless to you, now I'm good.
It's so true.
Yeah, give me that. Give me more of that.
I want to talk about fear a little bit. So you have been in so many of these situations. You just got back from one where there's like danger and death all around. And I know, at least for me personally and anybody listening, fear is really scary. I associate a lot with that quote from Dune that says, fear is the mind killer.
It is.
You almost don't know what to do. It can paralyze you. And you must be in positions all the time where you are scared, you are fearful, you don't want to be there, you don't like it, and yet you do it anyways. Mm-hmm. When was there a moment where fear was almost crippling to you? Does that happen to you, and what do you do?
Fear is debilitating, fear is paralyzing, and everyone has fear. Yeah. There's not like a person that doesn't have fear. Courage and bravery, even in the face of fear, you do the thing. I personally believe that there's not like a hero that you just open up your shirt and there's an S there and I'm able to like do this act. It is them consistently doing hard things and selfless things that enable them to overcome fear. I don't want to get in my cold plunge in the morning. It's cold. It's 34 degrees. I'm going to sit in there 5 minutes, but I get in there and my heart just pounds as if I'm about to die. And then 5 seconds later, I'm like, oh, this is all right. Like, that's the tiniest version of it. Like, I don't want to go out on the match with Yako.
Are you scared then?
To get choked?
Yeah.
Like, my ego is for sure. Competing in jiu-jitsu or competing in a shooting competition or jumping out of a helicopter with Travis Pastrana. Like, there's absolutely an adrenaline spike of fear.
Yeah.
But I choose to do the thing because it's hard. I choose to do the thing because it's better for somebody else. Like, just to make it super simple, I'm trying to like PR on a lift. Yeah, I'm fearful I'm not going to be able to lift it, but I lift it. The byproduct is I'm stronger after it. Yeah. I know that's like super oversimplification of it, but in the human condition, if I'm fearful to do this act, this hard thing, the selfless thing, this thing that might hurt me, that is suffering, but on the other side of it is a better version of me, cool, I'm down for it. I'm here for that.
Do you have a mental monologue that goes on? Like, for instance, I'm scared all the time and I try to do things anyway. I think fast twitch fear is interesting because fast twitch fear is like, I don't want to go get choked out, but like, I got to get on the mat and we're doing it right now. And so I have 30 seconds and I just have to go and I have to be able to fast twitch decide into fear. And then there's like slow twitch fear, which is I'm scared for an extended period. I could bail at some point. I could decide to not do this, but I have to beat fear every single second and moment for an extended period of time. And I remember like I was hiking Mount Banker. I don't like heights. I don't like the cold. It was a blizzard. I was scared of crevasses. We were all roped in. And it was 3 days of a mental monologue of like, don't be a pussy, like keep going. And what would that be like? Do you have a mental, like I played the Rocky song in my head. It was like, in here. Funny. Do you have that anymore? Or are you cognizant of it?
Well, I'm very cognizant of it. That desk back there is a painting of two guys on the runway of Afghanistan. That is in August as we're loading up C-47s or C-17s to get people out of Afghanistan. The flight into Afghanistan that I took out of UAE, it was a long flight. And for hours, I'm sitting there, I'm changing the batteries on my night vision, I'm getting my kit set up. I'm like, okay, I might not sleep for the next few days. I'm going to try and get a couple hours of sleep as cortisol and adrenaline's pumping through my veins. But there's complete conscious thought in this slow fear trip of I'm about to land in the middle of a conflict peak war zone. The last pictures I saw were C-17s taking off with people hanging onto the wheel wells falling to their death. And then I'm on the ground in Afghanistan and I see a spotter on our roof as I'm outside the wire that takes a peek and sees me. And I know it's a Taliban spotter. And in a matter of minutes, there's going to be a Taliban patrol trying to find us. And it's like, run. like run now or we're all going to die. And that's the fast twitch. Like I could stop. We could be like paralyzed by fear and just sit down and have a cup of tea until the Taliban get there and kill us all. Like, nope, not an option. I could walk up to the pilot and be like, man, change a heart, change a mind. I don't really want to go in Afghanistan. It's my plane. Like they'll turn around and fly back. We charter that flight. He would probably be more than happy to turn around, and because he's getting paid regardless. Sometimes you just have to do it for no other reason than doing it. The exploration, the adventure. Like, why did we have to go to the moon? Why did we have to? What is at the top of Mount Everest that we need? There's nothing. Like, we didn't find a cure to anything. It's doing it because it has to be done. Like, why did we plant that flag on Iwo Jima? Why did we climb the cliffs at Point the Hawk? Why did we go on Omaha Beach? Why did we jump into St. Mary? It's because it had to be done. And regardless of the fear that you're feeling, why do I get up early to provide for my family? Why do I go and challenge myself to be a better person in business, intellectually grow, physically grow? It has to be done because it's what has to be done. That's the end of it. Like, I have to do it. You can have a process, you can have a system, whatever you need to get you over the hump of doing it, but ultimately, it has to be done.
You watch the movies about you guys going into Afghanistan and Ukraine and Israel and special forces and what it's like. And there's like the team lead and he's around all his guys and he gives this speech and they're like, yeah, they go. And then I asked Chris about it and he's like, yeah, we basically don't do that. You just fuck it, you just kind of go. But I was wondering, is there a leader from when you were in or now in a moment that inspired you incredibly, and why and what happened and what he said?
I've had so many great leaders around me. I promise, Cody, I am like below average, especially in the worlds that I worked in and work in the military. Being around true, talented, high performers, I'm like hanging onto their coattails, trying to like, I don't deserve to be here. Be able to contribute in some form or fashion, I think is what each of us really focus on. So I take this pie, and we break this pie into these slices, and each of these slices for our skill set is my job and my responsibility. So as an 18 Bravo, a Special Forces weapons sergeant, I had very specific things that I was in charge of. I had to make sure that the guns were loaded, that the headspace and timing for the M2 is all set, or the Mark 19. I had to make sure that the routes were all set and get in with the 18 Echo, that all the fills were good, and that all the GPSs were preloaded, and that everybody has everything. Like, we're working and collaborating on that. In my piece of the pie, I have to make sure that I'm contributing to it. And my team sergeant isn't there getting like, all right, here's our motivating speech, guys. Like,
ever? No. All right, Hollywood's got it wrong.
Yeah. I remember I was in Iraq, pulling security. I wasn't even good enough to be on the inside of the building. I was literally on the outside of the building, in like behind cover, pulling security, as like the dudes were doing a battlefield interrogation, like tactical questioning on the inside. Lower experienced guy was on this other corner of this building, and we had these interlocking sectors of fire. So he was like looking, his piece of the pie was from here to here, and then my piece of the pie over here was from here to here, and our lasers would cross here, making sure that we both could see everything. The ground force sergeant major for the Delta Force unit that was on target with us, he comes up, he's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, pulling security. He's like, yeah, what are your sectors of fire? So I could turn my laser on, and the guy next to me, he turns his laser on, which is like confirming that we both are good here. Yeah. And sometimes you turn your laser on to indicate that you're looking at something. Yeah. So he'll turn it on too, but he'll put his on in flood mode so that I can see a little bit more. And I turn his off, and the Tommaso, who was wearing multi-cams, I was wearing desert combat uniforms. It's the DCU's, the camo color. So he like looked different. I'm like, who are you? And he's like, he says who he is. And I'm like, what are you doing here? He's like, anything I fucking want. Like, that's so cool, dude. That is like the coolest response. Like, you want to talk about the most motivating thing to like a young E5 on target that doesn't deserve to be there, as like the boss of all bosses is sitting next to you, spot checking your job, and you're doing the right thing. Like, that was the most motivating thing. As he wasn't disparaging me, like he wasn't like being aloof, he wasn't talking down to me. He was just being like matter of fact, like, whatever I want, bro. And then he walks back into Target to check on how the interrogation's going. And I was sitting here like, dude, that was so sick. I'm gonna pull the best security I possibly can. You get over there, check my laser again, check your laser again, sick. All right, that's the version of the motivating speech that is missed in the movie, and understanding the culture is like, and then back in, sick.
So good. I remember we went to Team 3's 30-year anniversary. What struck me is it's often with you guys not about what you say, it's about what you do. And so I've noticed that a lot because, with my team, I'm more of a, I try to do the doing, but I also try to motivate them with words, more my motto. So they basically highlighted the lives of every single Navy SEAL that had been lost over the past 30 years. And as they did it, you know Double D, right? Yeah. Badass.
Quite the resume, too.
Incredible resume. Like, I don't even know what I can say. So anyway, just the coolest SEAL that I had probably ever met. He's the one that's on the mic. First of all, it was like chills down your arm because they would each, they came out fully kitted, right? So in their uniforms. For every single member that had fallen, one of them was in their uniforms, with a gun and a flag. And then they, sat up on the side. And so immediately, because a lot of the family is there too, for those who've been recent, there's just a visceral reaction. And then I remember he would yell out each of their names and they would, respond. Just the whole group yelling somebody's name, and then they shut off, the guns as a tribute. And what I thought was so fascinating is so many times in the military and in government, you get like these huge speeches. And they don't say that much, although they use so many words. The really scary guys often don't say a lot, but man, the thing that they do sticks with you forever. Yeah. And so I think it's a good thing to remember for us humans. Like people aren't going to remember what you said, they're going to remember what you did.
We aren't what we say, we are what we do. My 9-year-old was asking, we talk about geopolitical things at the dinner table, and he was questioning some of the things that are happening internationally right now, Israel and Ukraine. And he's like, what side are we on? Are we good? Are we bad? If we're siding with Israel and they're, killing these people in Gaza, I'm like, man, what a tough question to answer. And I told him, like, we are what we do, both as a nation and as an individual. Like, are you a good person? Well, what do you do that is good for other people? That's easy. Like, yes or no. Like, do you selflessly give to others? No, you only work for yourself. You only work to benefit you and yours. I'm glad you go to church. I'm glad that you wear a polo and khakis every day. I'm glad that, what do you do for others?
That's the real test. Yeah. You have a crazy history, obviously, in the military, and your book is beautifully written. I remember texting you. I know that was so funny. You guys, first of all, never give you a compliment. You're the worst at compliments in the world. But that compliment you'll take?
Yeah, I'll receive anything, and negative speech I can receive.
Command through negation probably works well with compliments too. Okay, but you, in your book, one, I thought it was beautifully written, and then you had some incredibly hard moments in that book that you've talked about many times. What I haven't heard you speak about yet was you wrote a book where you lost friends, where you've chronicled almost every mistake and victory you've had through life. And there were moments in that book that, brought me to allergies in one way, shape, or form. What was the hardest part of that book to read? Did people get out of it what you wanted them to?
The response to it has just been so overwhelming. And so, I don't take compliments well, but, you go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble and you click it, comments, and there's 5,000 5-star, 4.9 out of 5,000 reviews. And it's, this book changed my life in this way. This book, thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your transparency. Thank you for showing, and each of those was a single person having read that book and it helping them in a way. And that meant so much. When I was writing that book, in between each of those lines or each of those stories is a smell or a sound that I vividly remember, that I tried to describe in black and white, but that never gets what was really happening. When I walked up to Mrs. Cunningham's door after Jared died, I was 15 years old. I remember the sun. I remember what it smelled like. I remember she'd been to the hospital and that she'd been up for a day now. I remember her mascara was gone and that her eyes were just like black, soulless eyes of a shark. And she couldn't even look at me because I was her son's friend. And so like wherever her eyes were, they weren't at me because obviously I was everything that she didn't want to see. I remember walking downstairs to Jared's room and it still gets me, you know, the lights were off. Nobody could go down that floor. They couldn't even go on that entire floor of the house, which was like the playroom. You know, our Commodore 64 was down there. The Atari was down there. You can't put that in black and white. I can't explain that. There's no way that you can explain the smell of the perfume that's a day and a half old on a woman that's been crying for 2 days. Those are the hard things that you can't put in pages. You try.
You can't, maybe, but I think you can feel it on the other side. For those people who have ever had to tell somebody that the person that means more to them than anything in the world is no longer with them and they're still there, they have a different smell that triggers it just the same. I mean, you know, Chris always talks about the smell of the dirt of Afghanistan. Yeah. You know, and how that smell, the second that we landed even in Morocco, after he had gotten out, he had to take a minute because it took him back some places. Yeah. But I think sharing those moments of difficulty in this world where everybody's talking about their trauma that they have that nobody else has, it's an excuse for why they're not going to do X and Y and Z, to say like we've all been through really hard things, and sharing it's a real gift.
My wife, we're having like a moment a couple of months ago, and she's like, I'm not all right. And I was like, yeah, welcome to the club. You know, like who here do you think is like all right? You know, like nobody is okay. Everybody has trauma. Everybody's gone through it. And I'm not going to like talk little like my suffering's greater or my suffering's been like everybody has gone through it. What's Trump's big son's name? That giant.
Oh God, I don't know, but I know who you're talking about.
Born into wealth and prosperity. Yeah. You know, like supermodel for a stepmom, you know, and like president for a dad, billionaire for a dad. You don't think that dude has adversity? You know, you don't think the Obama girls have a different kind of adversity that I can't even understand? Yeah. Of course they do. Without a doubt, there's trauma there. Yeah. You know, without a doubt, there's suffering there. So like with my wife, I was like, it is fine that you're not okay because I'm not either. But what we're going to do is keep working at doing hard things and giving back to other people.
Every time I've spoken to you, you talk about this next thing that you are building that is in the idea of heart and giving. Yeah. And your life has been kind of like a physical manifestation of hard things into business, which is really rare. And it seems like you turn some of the traumatic events that you've had in your life. You go to, you know, war zones. Your buddies are blown up in front of you. You know, you have lost innumerable men that you have touched throughout your times. You fought in the UFC. Did you really fight in the UFC for like $60 your first fight or something like that at Pachanga Casino? Yeah. What was wrong with you? Why did you decide to do that?
I mean, I was going down to Tijuana for nearly free.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because you wanted to fight? You loved fighting, or you were angry?
Both. Yeah, a young man without purpose, damaging, destructive, dangerous.
You were a young man that was angry fighting, and then you turned that into a career in UFC. And my husband says, he's like, you know, Tim will be in the UFC Hall of Fame. Like, incredible, storied history. To then, you turn it into a jiu-jitsu facility here. And you also turn it into self-defense for women. You know, you go to Green Beret military to then creating Save Our Allies and creating gear and gun companies. It seems like you almost take your deepest, darkest, most difficult things and turn them into businesses or something else. Is that true?
What was Winston Churchill in a speech that transformed a nation and united them to fight to the last man, woman, and child? What was that? The motivation of that speech was the complete eradication of their people. Like, that is coming from a position of fear. Like, every one of fighting out of the Great Depression that then went into World War II, those men trying to provide for their families, taking one potato and making it last a week, like, the fear was starvation, the end of their line. And they take all of that fear and they take all of that suffering and they weaponize it for good, or they weaponize it for overcoming, or they weaponize it for accomplishing, or they weaponize it like, It's a superpower when you can do that. When you can take the thing that can hurt you and then transform it into the thing that builds you.
The weaponized for good is that something that you think about?
I do.
Yeah.
We are going into a conflict war zone. I don't think there's a better example of weaponizing evil, like the things that we were taught to do, how to kill people, how to track people, how to figure out a pattern of life and an intersection point to be able to kidnap a person, how to overthrow a government. Like, these are the things that we were taught by our government to do. And I take the inverse of that and do that for good in a country to rescue Americans out of a conflict area. Like, there's not a better representation of that.
Speaking of hard to kill and weaponizing for good, is it a true story that you had ISIS members try to come after you here in Texas, and what you did next from that sounds crazy to me, but except I know you, so it might be true?
I think you're giving them a little bit too much credit when you say that, like, they're coming after you, because they're a bunch of cowards.
Yeah.
They're a bunch of like impotent, tiny, petty humans that don't have the capability to do anything brave or courageous unless there's like 25 of them and they're going to kick in a door in the middle of the night and like rape the child and then try to kill the parent.
Yeah.
Like, that's brave to them. Brave would have been actually doing what they were trying to do, which is find me and kill me.
Here in
Texas. The FBI called me and said, hey, just wanted to notify you that their ISIS is actively recruiting to find a radical in the Central Texas area, to find you and kill you. I was like, fucking sick. You know, like, this is so fantastic. I've been going all over the world trying to find these people, and you're telling me they're about to come to Texas? Pick up the phone. I have a friend that works for Fox News. I was like, hey, ISIS is trying to kill me. Can I go on live television? Like, yeah, sure. Unbeknownst to them, my plan was to go into live television and give my home address, which is what I did. The camera goes on, and I see a red light, and I was like, hey, we're live? Like, yeah, we're live. I'm like, this is so cool. Like, you can send anyone that you want to my door. Just know that you're never going to get them back. That's the end. And I just dumped my address on live television on Fox. And the FBI was pissed. My wife was pissed. Fox News was like, could you just do that? And yeah, but of course they didn't show up.
I wouldn't show up to your house either. Nope, no chance. But hysterical. Can't imagine why your wife was upset. Somebody asked me the other day, like, well, what would you do if somebody came into your house and tried to attack you? And I go, well, you know, the natural thing is, like, I just flip the switch that turns on the strobing lights and Welcome to the Jungle song, which is Chris's idea for home protection. And then, you know, you end with a shotgun. And so I think you guys are built different. Yeah. You guys are total psychopaths in the best way possible.
If somebody came into your house and Chris, like, you know, the alarm goes off, or, you know, a Ring camera goes off, and there's somebody like pushing in the door, the first thing he'd have to do is like hide his erection. He's like, yeah, finally. And then the second thing would go and like do the business that he's built to do. It'd be hilarious.
He might actually take off his pants.
Yeah.
He might not hide it.
And then he'd send me the video, I'd be like, dude, this is amazing. I just watch over and over and over again of him like himself and then going out there and taking the dude's scalp off.
Yeah, but, you know, quite honestly, you know, I was with a group of friends this weekend, and we were talking about there is such joy as a woman to be with a man who you know can protect you. Yeah. And to support that man in the endeavors that he has. You know, we helped support him on some stuff that he did this weekend. Young Codie kind of thought that she was girl boss, tough, didn't need no man. Now being very happily married to somebody who at times drives me crazy, for sure, but is that protector, is so incredible.
Empowering.
Do you know how much more I can achieve because I have somebody behind me that I know will be there no matter what?
Similarly, like, this is symbiotic. Like, how much better of a human he is because he has you behind him. It is such a broken projection of what that beautiful marriage looks like. At no point is he demanding or commanding as a protector of the household about what you're going to be or what you're going to do, what you're going to wear, or how you're going to run your business. And similarly, like, in no way, shape, or form, as you support him, are you undermining him or taking authority from him, as he is just selflessly giving back to you, and vice versa. And how sick that is, to come home to that woman that loves you and will, I literally just said this a few days ago. I was like, you fill me, like, her question is like, I'm so little in all of these things that you do. I was like, I can't do any of the things that I do without you filling me up to do those things. And like, everything in my soul and everything in my being is rejuvenated, and some things are created in those moments with her.
And I think, realizing that you have a human who will go through the test of time with you is one of the most powerful things you can do. Because why else fight? Why else work out? Why else get the six-pack? Why else build? It's not, at some point, you don't need more money. It's because you want to leave a legacy and because you want to impress the person that you're with to be the best type of human you can, and it's really beautiful. I want to out you on the internet about something. I feel about
that happens often.
One of your biggest secrets, actually it's not totally secrets that the internet doesn't know, is you have an almost trad wife level of love for chickens.
I do love chickens.
You and I, we always joke about these like sending little chicken videos that we should be doing. We talked about being hard to kill, but this other part of what you do is like being hard to sustain overall. Like, being a type of person who can be an independent center of gravity. Part of that is like chickens and meat, and like talk a little bit about that, because I think there's a whole movement of women that love that, and a whole movement of men that are now kind of getting into this as well.
Self-sufficient, being a provider, being a protector, all of that falls back into categories of being sovereign. So sovereign is like, being free is cool. Being sovereign is where it's at. Being sovereign is, I'm going to live my life, and there's nothing that I need from anyone else to live the life that I want to live. You're going to tell me to do a thing, I don't have to do that thing, because you have no authority over me. Hey, I want you to take this experimental medicine. Like, nah. I don't need to, because I'm like super freakishly healthy, and as are my kids. Take this disease that you're trying to protect me from, go ahead and inject in that 4-year-old's neck, because she will poop it out like 5 minutes later. She's eating bison and running up the side of that hill, because like that's just who she is, as this antibody of power and strength. So like, I want sovereignty. With sovereignty, because like food, health, financial freedom, like these are all requirements to be truly free. For like a sovereign nation to have borders that are sovereign, to be like financially self-sufficient. So that's what I want for me, for my family, for my household, is sovereignty. And chickens are kind of a representation of that. They are like this proclamation of like, they give me guilt-free protein. Like you want to be a vegetarian for like ethical reasons, buy chickens, because they give you the most, like in that tiny little egg is everything to build life. Every nutrient that you need to live is inside of that beautiful thing that they're going to drop every single day. And it's free. They're freely giving it to you. And they're cute. And like, I got little poof head ones that run around. You know,
I want that one.
Luna.
I want that one so bad.
And my eggs are orange, and they're rust colored, and they're blue, and they're green, and they're speckled, and they're white. And they're the sweetest things. Those chickens chase my dogs around, they chase my cat around, they follow wherever my kids are playing. The chickens will be there. So like, if they're out on the swings, or they're on the pirate ship, or they're in the backyard riding motorcycles, the chickens are like immediately adjacent to them, because they just want to be with the family. Like this guy right here, that was a 265 grain bullet that was flying at 3,000 feet per second. Now they call it the chef kiss, that hole right in the front. You shoot it right in the face. I didn't need a trophy. I was trying to harvest every ounce of meat off of the entire animal, right? So I'm not going to shoot it through here, which is going to take some rib meat. Yeah. So normally, in an ethical harvest, especially when you're shooting wild game that's broadside to, you're going to punch the lungs and go through the heart, so they're immediately dead. Yeah. That's a very ethical way to harvest an animal. Not chef kiss right there, where you just kind of like punch a hole, tons of energy goes immediately into the brain, and it's just darkness. He's sitting there, he was an old bison, eating some grass, and then there's blackness. That's the end. There was no pain, there was no anything. 1,000 pounds of meat. 1,000 pounds. That is like 2 years of meat for a family. Food at fajitas, corned beef hash.
No seed oils.
Just real nutrient.
My dad had to work in a slaughterhouse too, and like the industrial food complex.
It's evil. It's toxic.
Yeah.
They're trying to poison us. They want you sick.
Yeah.
Like, don't want to be sick? Get chickens. You want to be free? Get chickens. You want to have cute little things running around? Get chickens.
Don't own a chicken company, but we should. Okay.
It's the best.
I love this. So I want to end with talking about you as a parent, because you took it one step further than most people do, which is not only do you parent your children differently, but you started a school. And that school now has tentacles to start a bunch of other schools. Yeah. And so maybe start with telling me, what do you do as a parent that you think is a no fucking brainer that most parents would think is crazy or have never thought of?
I don't do things for them. Parents, I think out of, one, their egos, and two, their own trauma, their history, of maybe not having, they then try to give everything to their kids. And by giving everything to their kids, they're taking away everything that kid needs, which is the opportunity to accomplish, which is the opportunity to create, which is the opportunity to overcome, which is the opportunity to suffer. I know that sounds hard, that you're going to intentionally allow your child to do something hard. We're like, oh, I'll just go tie their shoe for them. Don't fucking do that. Let them learn how to tie their own shoe. It'll give them this feeling of accomplishment. It gives them sovereignty. It gives them the knowledge of doing something new. It gives them the small motor function of being able to do something difficult. You don't need to do it for them. That is a really hard thing to, I love my kids and I would do anything for them. And the thing that I have to do the most for them is nothing. I have to let them accomplish and challenge. And I have to, dude, this is a hard one. I have to hold my wife back. Yeah. Be like, no, let him go for a second. Let him do it himself. If he falls from the tree, he's not going to break anything. He's going to get hurt. He's not going to get damaged. Yeah. Let him climb.
Is that part of the core curriculum at Apogee?
100%.
If you had to sum it up in a few sentences, what is different between my public school and Apogee?
Everything is different. I think the first and most important thing is the ability to choose. In public school, they're given everything. You're taking this test, you're going to use this pencil, you're going to use this piece of paper, you're going to sit in that desk, you're going to sit in that chair at that desk in this classroom. We don't give any of them that. You sit wherever you want. You don't have to sit in a chair. You can sit upside down on the wall if you want. You can either do it or you can't. You've either done the work to be able to accomplish this thing or you haven't. We're putting first and foremost inside of them this intrinsic desire to accomplish, to create, to collaborate, to critically think. Yep. And those characteristics are not being taught in school. I argue that they're actually being taken from them. We're trying to build what's inside of them first. This is a byproduct of what's in here. The desire to read and desire to learn and to be intellectually challenged is not because somebody told you to sit down and take the STAR test. It's because there was a catalyst, there was something that was lit and ignited in you. I have to have more. I have to know more. I have to do more. I want this feeling that I just got by creating this thing and then taking this thing to market and then selling this thing that I created and built, and then people like it. And now it feels good because I'm contributing to them. It's very entrepreneurial. And that whole entire line was like an 8-year-old, vastly different. So one is, we're giving them all the choices. 2 is we are letting them learn by making mistakes. This is a hard thing for parents that aren't quite on board. When they start looking at it, a lot of people want straight A's on their refrigerator, and they want Tommy to come back in his school uniform, and the teacher put 5 gold stars on his little daily sheet as their parents drop their kid off at 8 o'clock, and they're going to pick them up at 4 o'clock because they don't care about their kid. They don't get any of that from us.
You have a couple daughters, but you have one that's still quite young. Will you let her make all the mistakes like you will your young son? Do you think there's a difference between men and women and how you parent them in that way?
Yeah, but there's definitely a difference about how you parent every single child, and especially boys and girls. But I'll argue that the amount of adversity that women have to overcome is far more significant than the type of adversity that I have to overcome as a man. So that little girl being able to have the confidence and the power behind her voice and know that 4-year-old, go up and try to touch her. She has a voice and is I don't know you, don't touch me. Just instantly, automatically, not stranger danger, just you're a weird person, get away. And where did that confidence come from? That confidence came from her doing hard things, watching her where she was in hockey practice. She's 4. She was in hockey practice yesterday. And I was like, why were you drawing on the ice? And she's like, well, I kept falling. So she was sitting down on the ice and she was drawing with a puck. And I was like, well, how do you think you're going to fall less? She's like, by skating more. I'm like, were you going to skate more sitting on the ice drawing? And she's like, fine. She throws the puck and she gets up and she skates off.
I like her already. Yeah. Do you have anything really good planned for the first dude she brings home? I know you do.
Yeah, I think it's just be so funny. Comes in, I just walk out of my gun room that is in my house, mostly naked, with like a dead animal hat on and like sharpening a weapon and
one of many.
But not like make a thing about like, what's going on? And be so sweet and gregarious and welcoming and inviting. Like, I'm so glad you're here. I've been so thrilled to meet you. She talks so much about you, like really thrilled about what you guys are going to be doing. And he'd be like, I'm gonna just have to.
One of the best things that my dad did was when I was younger too, I remember people would say to him all the time what they say to, you have beautiful daughters. And so they're like, oh gosh, karma's going to be a bitch for, you're going to have to watch out for that one. And he would always look back at him and he would always go, they're going to have to watch out for her. Yeah. And like that line I carried throughout my whole life. And I think you've obviously done the same thing with your daughters. We've talked a lot about personal sovereignty across the board and things that people should do to change their life in very small ways and in very big ways. You have a ton of different mechanisms for that here. If you were to tell people like right now, today, one thing to change specifically, is it like go try to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Is there like a tactical hack that you're like, I have seen, because we've coached thousands of people in shooting, protecting, in buying guns and buying gear. Is there one thing that you think, man, this is actually a hack? It's hard,
100%.
But you should do it. What is it?
It's grit. Every selection. Hell Week with the SEALs, Team Week, Special Forces selection. You cannot, there's not a predictor of like this guy did jiu-jitsu or he was a wrestler or he played water polo. Sure. Like the best swimmers in the world go to BUD/S and they bail out just like everybody else. The freak D1 athlete that played football, like he is the superhero build, shows up at Special Forces selection, he quits just like everybody else. Like the predictor is grit in business. Like if you walk out here and like if you think about all your successful entrepreneurial friends, like what is a characteristic they all have in common? Like Dan and I do not have anything in common. Yeah. Like we physically the opposite, like intellectually the opposite. Like our approach and values, like very dissimilar. What do he and I have in common? There's grit, a thing that is just gonna keep fighting. And just like that guy at selection or that guy in BUD/S, he just won't quit. So how do you build grit? That's the question. This is the hack. It is suffering. I was listening to a TED Talk and they're talking about kids becoming successful after college. And they're looking for a characteristic that was the predictor. And at first they were looking at like their grades and their IQ, where their internships were. Like if one was at a Fortune 500 company, ultimately they had to change the whole entire measurement scale because they couldn't find a predictor. Then they started looking at characteristics, personality characteristics and specifically. And the one thing that stood out was grit. Someone that has resolve. Like these are all synonyms of grit. That is a direct byproduct of the physical challenges that somebody does in life. Some of those you can elect to do. You do those by choice. So the hack is go do hard things. Go do jujitsu. Go climb the mountain, hit the peak, find the summit. Like apogee, the word apogee is the top culmination of a moment. It is the summit of a thing. It is a crescendo of a song. To reach that thing is you have to do all of the suffering leading up to it.
The deal of the week this week. Well, the deal is actually the business of Tim Kennedy. So if you listen to the rest of this episode, you might have thought, well, he seems like kind of a badass former, MMA guy, former military guy. But, what else? And the truth is, if you thought that's all that Tim Kennedy did, you would be wrong. This guy's an absolute machine. Let me list for you all the different businesses this guy has so we can learn how to build multiple businesses, so we can break down how to build what I call satellite businesses around your core thesis. And we can do it while having fun and maybe making a difference in the world. Listen to this. Okay. So he's got Apogee School for children in Texas, Sheepdog Response, live trainings around the country like protection, hunting, shooting, tactical for both civilians and government. Sheepdog Response Gear, which is like shooty, stabby, rolling around pieces of gear. Black Rifle Coffee, he was an investor in the business, also is a franchise holder. Ranger Up, fitness clothing and gear company. Live Relentless, supplement and nutritional fitness company. Noble Defender, next gen tactical weapons accessories. 4 Pillars Fitness, which is a fitness and training app. He has a new jiu-jitsu studio of Gracie Humaita in Austin, which is actually a franchise business. And what's wild about this is when you walk into his office, I've actually never seen this before. I came in this sneaky way, but let's say you're going to come in through the front. First of all, the whole thing's bulletproof, which is wild. Then you walk into the front of his office. He calls it a kill box, but basically what it is a foyer for those more evolved humans. And that foyer opens to, on one side, a gear and retail store. Behind that, a gun store where you can like ship guns that you want to buy. You can actually purchase arms, ammo, etc. there. Then behind that is Gracie Humaita, his jiu-jitsu gym. So there's a full gym, full training area, full franchise under the Gracie Humaita brand. Then you go into the other side, and there, I can only explain it as a re-rendition of the Wild West. It's like 5 offices along one side with the people who run his varying businesses. Then he has an area in the middle that's open for anybody to meet there and engage. When I was there, they actually had might have been Delta, it might have been Green Beret. Basically what those mean is there's like the normal armed forces, and then there are the special forces. So those usually have special training, some elite level on top of them. So anyway, there's a guy there talking to a young man who wants to potentially become a Delta, and then a couple of recruiters. So he lets some of the military guys use it. Then he's got his online businesses in the back where he does all of the shipping from them, like a big, unit for that. And then he's got 2 podcast studios, like one that he lets some people rent out, one podcast studio that he uses, and his office. And then he looks across the way and he's like, I want to buy that building over there. And what I thought was so interesting is, you guys heard this during the podcast. He was talking about, weaponize things for good. The way that I look about this business model that I think is fascinating is what I call the core satellite. So when people ask me what type of business I should buy, I typically say something like, well, if you're an accountant and you know accounting and you've managed an accounting business before, you probably should first go out and buy another accounting business because you already know this. It's like the devil you know. And then on top of the accounting business, maybe you could layer on like a financial advice business. Maybe you could layer on like a financial education-based business. Maybe you could layer on an app for accounting. Maybe you could buy other accounting companies. So you have like your core of the thing you're really uniquely good at, and then you buy these satellite businesses around it. Now, Tim's built these businesses, not bought them for the most part. I think he bought into the Black Rifle company from an investment standpoint and bought the franchise rights. But what's so cool is they all make sense, right? If he gets one customer to Gracie Humaita, guess what they're going to need? They're going to need jiu-jitsu gear. Oh, great. Buy it in the store right there. They're going to also potentially need workout gear. Oh, great. Buy it in the store right there. The likelihood that they are also into hunting and fitness and protection, so we'll do some sheepdog courses, really likely. Might they also be somebody who buys a gun? Probably. The fascinating part about the jiu-jitsu thing is I used to do jiu-jitsu back in the day. I should really get back into it. And I did some women's classes. 70 to 80% of all females who practice jiu-jitsu have either been sexually assaulted or have known somebody who was sexually assaulted, and that was the reason they came to jiu-jitsu. It's really powerful to see these women want to protect themselves more because it's a scary thing. I get it. We weren't taught to like fight. We weren't really taught to roughhouse. And so learning all of that is really, really cool and interesting. And then he can also support all of his portfolio companies through this big media empire he has, which is he has a podcast, he has books, he has a bunch of social media channels, and he has people like me come in there who would interview him. He was like, can we do it at my office? I said, sure. And so I went into his office and we basically toured all of it. We're going to show you guys some short form content about it too. What a flywheel. So a flywheel in business obviously is like you go to an old, like a water mill where you have the water thing that scoops the water out and it scoops the water out and it dumps it back in. And this process right here of scooping that is just from the power of the river rolling through this scooping mechanism that automatically creates what? Energy. And that energy, as long as the river keeps flowing, it gets easier and easier. The first push on the water wheel is kind of hard, but after a while, the river just keeps flowing. And that's what Tim Kennedy has. He has this water wheel or flywheel for his business where his media company supports just about everything else that he does. So the deal of the week this week is actually a dude, and his name's Tim Kennedy. I hope you all felt how special this episode was to me, too. You know, I'm trying to, through this podcast, open up some of the humans that I think are most unique in the world that I actually have come to know and love, to all of you. We don't go out and try to interview the most famous people, the hottest new thing, whoever's got a hot new book out, the podcasters that you guys have all listened to forever. That's not my jam. My jam for this and for you is truly this, that I think you are a big deal. You are a big deal to me, and I want to do everything humanly possible to help you have personal sovereignty in every aspect of your life and to show you the humans who already have it and steal their homework so you can get it too. See you next week. You guys, if you liked this today, I don't know if I've told you all about this, but we have a community for small business buyers, people who want to buy a small business and scale it. And we also have a series of courses specifically focused on this one idea, that if you can do deal making to get ownership, you have more personal sovereignty. It's called Contrarian Community, and the courses are all listed at Contrarian Thinking. The community is for those who are really serious about taking action in small businesses right now. But if you just want to learn how to do deals, maybe how to do seller financing in deals, or how to buy businesses by yourself, sort of mano a mano, you should 1,000% check this out. It's a labor of love for me. We have what I think is the Wharton of M&A, mergers and acquisitions, online. It's getting better every day. And if you guys haven't checked it out, you should go do that today. Contrarianthinking.co, look up education and see if any of those things are right for you in your business buying journey.
That I have it, you know that I got it. No need to look all in a bag. Starting like this because I work so hard. I'm the best. I only speak facts.
Most of the greatest entrepreneurs, you actually would not want them as an employee.
I was literally going to bring this up. Steve was an eccentric. He was 19 years old, showed up barefoot, and he only wanted to work at night. Everybody's telling Nolan Bushnell, get rid of this guy. He's like, no, I want to capture the upside. And because the upside's so extreme, I'm willing to deal with the downside.
The guy that I have on today, David Senra, has become a friend. There is nobody in the world, I am convinced, that knows more about the world's greatest founders. So if you want to see inside Jeff Bezos' head and inside of founders that don't even exist anymore but have shaped our world, you're going to want to listen to this episode.
Keep your freedom. You can control what you work on. If you love it, you'll do it all the time. If you do it all the time, you'll get really good at it, and money will come as a result.
Yeah, obsession is kind of contagious, isn't it?
I would say passion is infectious.
You have me peaked. I want to hear this Mr. Beast story.
Oh, so this is the funniest ever. He goes, I want to run an ad where it says, Mr. Beast wants founder friends.
Stop it.
A lot of people don't understand. The founder life, it is kind of lonely, and only other entrepreneurs and other founders kind of understand that.
Do you need to cut people from your life that do not want to win?
Yeah, I was literally thinking about this morning.
I was curious for you, you've talked a little bit about relationships of famous founders and entrepreneurs. Like, what have you found are the marriages or relationships like by the greatest entrepreneurs?
Marriages?
Yeah.
Terrible. They're terrible. I mean, there's very few people, because you tend to be obsessed. Like, I also think like it's important to note. So the people that appear on Founders Podcast, right? They were so good at their jobs that somebody wrote a book about their life. This is like the tiniest percentage of any humans that have ever existed. So of course they're like outliers of outliers. And what I would say is most people over-optimize their professional life to the detriment of their personal life. And there's a great documentary on this called The Defiant Ones, which is one of my favorites. It's probably my second favorite documentary besides The Last Dance, if you're like an obsessive person. And I've probably watched The Defiant Ones at least 10 times. Jimmy Iovine, who many people would be surprised. They're like, you know, of all the people you want to meet, who would you want to meet? And in my top 3, Jimmy Iovine was in there. It was James Dyson, Jeff Bezos, and Jimmy Iovine. And Dyson and Jeff Bezos makes perfect sense for somebody that, you know, studies the history's greatest entrepreneurs. We're like, Jimmy Iovine, why? And I was like, you just got to watch The Defiant Ones because it's a great documentary. People think it's a documentary on the relationship and partnership between Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine. No, it's a documentary on entrepreneurship. They're just very entrepreneurial. And in that documentary, they interview Jimmy's ex-wife and they interview Dr. Dre's wife, who then they've since been divorced after that. And, you know, they both talk openly, both of the women talk openly about how difficult it is to be married to people like this. And I think they can describe it better than anybody else because it's from the spouse's perspective. But it essentially comes from, you have usually highly disagreeable people, very driven people, obsessed people, have a hard time, you know, taking a break, are dedicated. And you can't have a relationship if you're not, you know, spending time with the other person and making them a priority.
Yeah. Do you think that entrepreneurship is a trauma response in some ways? Like it's like PTSD and so you become an entrepreneur?
I actually have a lot of people, you know, because when you think about these life stories, there's usually some kind of like unhappiness, usually an issue with like their parents, like a relationship with the father is a big instigator. Maybe they grew up in poverty. I would just say that I don't think it's prerequisite for extreme success. It's just that most humans grow up in bad environments. And so I think it's literally just a bigger sample size. There you can, grow up in a loving household and still have extreme success. I don't know if it's a trauma response. I do think I have a different view of this. Like I hope, I was just talking to Toby Luque of Shopify about this. He said something interesting because I had a long form conversation with him for the new show. And he said at the very end, he's like, oh, me and you have the same job. Our job is to create more entrepreneurs. And I never thought about that because he was a fan of both founders, of the podcast founders too. And I would like to help entrepreneurs surface useful information for them, but I don't know if you can create more of them. Maybe he could. I just think that there is something almost innate in it. It's like a personality. I don't think you choose to be an entrepreneur. I think like there's this great line from Jeff Bezos where he says, we don't choose our passions choose us. Yeah. That's how I kind of think about it. So I think even if that entrepreneur type didn't even have trauma, they still would do what they're doing. Like I'm an unmanageable person. There's no way I could ever work for somebody. I'd get fired. Like I just can't not say what's on my mind. Me and you are both control freaks. It's very obvious. We talk about this before recording.
Control enthusiast, I like to say.
Yeah, exactly. I want to, pick what I work on, who I work with, how I work. These are just things that are incompatible with, with being an employee. So I didn't think there was an option, whether I had trauma in my childhood or not.
Yeah, I kind of think, I don't know if it's a story you tell yourself when you're an entrepreneur, but I do think I at least am unemployable now. And probably it seems to me like most of the greatest entrepreneurs, you actually would not want them as an employee. They might be incredible, but you might not. But I'm curious because you have a story. I think you're the one that I heard it from. It was about Steve Jobs and the founder of Atari.
I swear to God, that was on my mind just
Really?
now. I was literally going to bring this up.
Okay,
yeah.
Tell us a story.
So there's an interesting thing that I'm very interested in these ideas that people that didn't know each other, lived at different times, worked in different industries, and in many cases, were in different parts of the world, arrived at similar conclusions. And this idea that I've now heard from a bunch of living entrepreneurs. So Daniel Ek, founder of Spotify, told me this. Kareem, founder of Ramp, told me this, that they hire for spikes. And their point was that, big corporations, the advantage that you have as like as a founder-led company is like big corporations kind of like manage to the middle. So they want you to look a certain way, act a certain way. There's just a lot more like structure around them. Where if you're a founder-led company, you have the authority that like, a non-founding CEO probably lacks. And so their whole thing is just like, I don't judge you by your worst idea. I judge you by your best. And usually if you want the most talented designer in the world or the most talented programmer in the world or the most talented X of anything in the world, they're going to be unusual people with very distinct personalities. And a lot of their personality types will usually lead to like bad behavior. And so like one example of this is like one of the best designers that Spotify ever had. And this is the early days of Spotify. It's like he was bipolar and also an alcoholic, but also the world's best designer. And if the CEO and the founder didn't sit next to him while he designed, if Daniel got up to go take a call or something else, they'd lose track of this guy for days. He would just like take off running. So people were telling Daniel, like, what are you doing? You're the founder of this company, your CEO. It's like, you can't just sit and babysit this guy. He's like, he's so talented. Yes, I do. It's a very high leverage, thing I'm doing right now, and they knew it wouldn't last forever. It's not somebody's going to work with you for 20 years. And this is not new. It's like you'll see these characters in these books. And so I didn't know this until I read, I think I've done like 15 episodes on Steve Jobs by now. But one of the funniest things was Nolan Bushnell. A lot of people don't realize that in that time in Silicon Valley, this was probably 40 years ago, very common for founder starts a company, raises money, bring in professional management. There was very few of these like founders in their 20s left to run their companies. And Nolan was one of the first ones, and he was like 27. And he thought both Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak were very talented, but Steve was an eccentric. He would show up to the office barefoot. He was 19 years old, show up barefoot, refused to shower, I think at the time was only eating like a fruit diet. Like he just had a very extreme personality type. And then he only wanted to work at night. And he insisted that he could sleep in the office. And everybody's telling Nolan Bushnell, like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, get rid of this guy. He's like, no, he's like, I want to capture the upside, and I'm willing, because the upside's so extreme, I'm willing to deal with the downside. And so he's like, okay, we kind of secluded Steve away from the rest of the general population, and we let him work at night, and we just, told people to hold their nose because he had such offensive body odor, and he slept at the office. And he wound up being that would wind up being a good trade that Nolan did.
Yeah, I think I saw somewhere it was a video on divas and hiring divas one way or the other. It might have been Steve Jobs too. And I thought about it because we had one of my best engineers. He's brilliant. And I won't say who he is, but he is building one of our products. And anyway, he's doesn't have very high EQ. So his engagements with other people are either extremely passive or like psychopathic. So I have to have a chat with him every so often. And the other day, so I'm like, hey man, you gotta push on this team. You gotta push harder. And he's like, no, I'm pushing. And I'm like, need you to have some big energy. Get in there. I want you to tell him what to do. Like you are in charge. You go. Well, that translation turned into him walking into a room full of like 80% women and going, Cody told me I had to put my on the table. That was like my life. And so the women came to me and they're like, this was odd behavior. I'm like, listen, that's probably my fault. I'll correspond with him, but we're not doing anything about it because he's so good. So I do relate to this idea of divas or really high performers sometimes being somebody that you have to keep, sometimes somebody you have to get rid of. There was another one that you talked about that I really liked, which is I'm obsessed with George Lucas. I just love that he's a world builder, plus has been transcendent for decades. And he was supposedly like really difficult to work with. And I loved the some of your stories that you've told about him. But I was wondering, like, he not only was really difficult, but came up with wild ideas and worked with really spiky people. Do you have a favorite story from George Lucas? Or do you have something that you think George Lucas would teach people that most people don't realize?
There's a great biography of George Lucas called George Lucas: The Life. It's written by Brian J. Jones, who's also a prolific biographer. He has a bunch of biographies I like. But it says the most important line in that book is that George Lucas unapologetically invested in what he believed in most, himself. And he was another control freak. And one of the biggest bets he did, so he did this movie called American Graffiti. And he didn't have any leverage at the time because he was still a rather unknown director. Again, another thing that was very rare is to have directors in their early 20s. The director that kind of blazed the path for all these guys was a guy named Francis Ford Coppola, who was running big budget, major movies. He was like in his late 20s. He's probably around 27 as well. And so Steven Spielberg saw this, George Lucas saw this, Brian De Palma saw this, all these directors and filmmakers that were friends with each other. And I think Coppola is like, maybe half a decade older, maybe a decade older. And so he played a huge role. But at the time that he's making American Graffiti, which is one of the best returns on investments. I think he did the movie for like $1 million, if I remember, and he made like 57 million at the box office. But because he didn't have creative control, and he wanted final cut on his movie because it wasn't just a movie; it's very personal to him. They cut like 4 minutes from the movie, and he said it's like cutting off fingers. It was so painful for him, and that led him to I think he made like $4 to $5 million on that movie, which a ton of money back then. And then that gave him, he wrestled on the next project for creative control over Star Wars. And then he wanted ownership of the merchandise rights. And I think the merchandise rights were the most important thing. I forgot the other thing that he argued. It was like a very simple contract. But I think just the idea of like, I believe in myself. I'm willing to take less money up front, because a lot of directors are just like, no, just pay me $10 million and you keep all the money in the back end. He's like, I don't care about the money. I care about the control. And if you're talented and you maintain control, you wind up with the money anyways. That was, I think, one of the most important lessons from George Lucas.
Yeah. You know what you've also talked a lot about, which I'm curious, and you almost only talk to entrepreneurs that have had massive longevity. And you have some great quotes on longevity too, how, history's greatest entrepreneurs think in decades. There was another one I really liked, talking about personal standards. I'm curious, what have you seen it takes to last as an entrepreneur? Like, so many people flame out. What do you want to do if you want to succeed for the long term and not be a footnote in history?
I'm glad you picked up on that because it is one of the most important things for me. Like, I'm terrified of being successful for a year or 5. I almost think like being successful and losing it is worse than never being successful. So, somebody runs a company and looks like success on paper for a year or 5 years. Like, it's like, that's not interesting to me. So for the new show, if you look at, we can go through like the first 3 guests. First guest, I picked them on purpose for this exact, we both share this love and admiration for Charlie Munger, you and I do. And he thought durability was a first-rate virtue. What I mean is, it's like you build a company to last, not to just make a bag of money and then disappear onto an island. I'm not interested in that. And so when I thought about the people I wanted to talk to, and this is who this haunts me in my dreams. So, I had a nightmare the other night. I'm literally arguing with people because they're like, why don't you interview more startup founders? And I was like, I want people that have done, that are not just promoting something. Because a lot of the entrepreneurship industry, especially people that you're consuming this content, it's all, usually tied to some kind of like VC-backed company. Yeah. They're promoting, they're talking about stuff they may do in the future. And a small percentage of them will do what they're saying in the future. Somebody else can do that. I want you to be able to point to a body of work and be like, this is what I did. And this is what I learned by doing this. And I want to surface those ideas. Mm-hmm. And so like Daniel, first guest on the new show, Daniel worked on Spotify for 20 years. Second guest, let me see if I can go through this by memory. Second guest, Michael Dell. He started Dell when he's 19. He's 61 and he's still doing it.
Dude, tell him that line that Michael Dell has about how many days of the week he works.
So
I have that on my wall.
So this was hilarious because I actually DM Michael Dell because he's been very nice to me. And he like tweets and posts on LinkedIn about founders that he thinks it's like a useful tool for the world. And I really appreciate it. And then I get to spend time with him. And I think he's the GOAT. He's just one of the most kind but fascinating people to talk to because of, again, we're starting a company at 19. This is how crazy it is. I'll get to that statement one second. I highly recommend everybody read his autobiography or listen to it because he actually reads the autobiography. Mm-hmm. But there's a crazy line in there where I didn't even know that IBM at the time was the most valuable company in the world. It was the first company in history to hit $100 billion market cap, which I also didn't know. And he goes, I'm in the University of Texas dorm room. I have $1,000. And he's trying to convince his parents to let him like work on his company and drop out of school. And he's like, with this $1,000, I'm going to take on the most valuable company in the world, which is IBM. It's such a wild statement. And then to go on and to succeed and to navigate all these different technological, revolutions that he successfully endured. He built a durable company. And, somebody like that has 41 years of entrepreneur experience. Like you just sit there and talk to him. Zach Dell's a friend. And he's building this great company called Base.
He is a smart dude, which is not always the case for billionaires' kids.
Yeah, well, he's going after it. That
Zach's solar company or that energy company has is incredible.
Yeah, but he says, he goes, the Bloomberg terminal? He's like, I have dad terminal. So he's like, I call my dad's like, I have an issue with my supply chain. Well, guess what? Michael's seen everything. He's so helpful as a thought partner on this. I think it's just like insanely valuable. But this is also why I wanted to start the new show, because I resisted for a long time. I was like, no. It's like, I can't start another podcast. It's like a loss of focus. I'm just going to focus on reading biographies of history-based entrepreneurs and just doing one episode a week, and that's it. But then when you put something out like that, guess what? Anybody that lived a life so remarkable that somebody wrote a book about it, in every biography, you'll realize, almost everyone, they were reading biographies when they were younger and they were trying to figure out. So this is, again, a line from Charlie Munger where it's like, learning from history is a form of leverage. Why did Munger read hundreds of biographies? Why did Buffett read hundreds of biographies? Why did Elon read hundreds of biographies? Why did Jeff Bezos, like Steve Jobs? This just over and over again. It's obviously one of the highest value things you can do. So I was like, let me just focus on that because I think it's good for the world and other people getting value of it. Some of the best entrepreneurs in the world obviously listen to it. Michael Dell was one of them. But then what was happening is, as a result of this work, I got to get to know these people, have conversations with them. And then I'm learning so much in the conversations too. Just, it's like being able to prompt a book instead of me being just reading the book. And I can, wait, what do you mean by that? Follow up, explain that a little bit more. And so it's like, oh, I should just record these conversations and then other people can benefit from them, not just me. And I also thought, because I had this like catalog, this encyclopedic knowledge of the history of entrepreneurship, I could create something truly differentiated where if Michael Dell's sitting across from me and he says something, I'm like, oh wait, that's just like Bezos said this in his shareholder letter. And like this guy named Daniel Ludwig said this and Rockefeller said this. And so it's almost like tying it all together, like this giant weave. And I knew that because, God bless him, but there was this guy, he runs a great podcast, but he had Michael Dell on his podcast one time and he goes, so when you're starting Dell, how many hours did you work a week? And Michael's so polite and so kind and he's a great person. And you just looked at him like, and he goes, he literally, I think, paused. He goes, all of them?
So good.
Because like, if you started a company, what the answer to that question is. Like, it's like, oh no, I clocked out at 5:00. I have $1,000. I'm going against $100 billion company. 5:00, guys. See you tomorrow. Like, come on, you know that the answer is. So I just thought, okay, I think I understand these people on a very, fundamental level, and that could maybe hopefully make the conversations interesting.
Do you think you have to be obsessed to win? Like, if you want to be one of the greatest, do you have to be obsessed?
Is there anybody I've talked to that wasn't obsessed? So we can go back through the guest list. So 20 years, Daniel Ek, obsessed. He couldn't work on anything. He just stepped down because his natural state is to work on multiple companies at one time. And we should talk about founder archetypes because we're working on this project together, which you might find interesting. And really the importance of like knowing yourself. And then you're not going to be successful unless you can build a company that's a reflection of you. Essentially like an echo or a shadow of the founder. So Daniel's had to be obsessed if Spotify wouldn't have worked. Michael Dell is still obsessed to this day. He's obsessed with puzzles. And he just looks at like constantly reinventing his company as like a giant puzzle. So he's been doing it for 40 years. Brad Jacobs has 43 years of experience as an entrepreneur. He started 8 separate billion-dollar companies. You should get him on here. He's a fascinating character. One of the most.
Yeah.
He's
on my list.
He changed my life. We should talk about inner monologues too, because I had a very negative inner monologue. And I've spent a bunch of time with Brad, and he's the one who's just like, this is stupid. Like, he used to have an inner monologue, a very negative inner monologue, very self-critical. He talks about this in his book called How to Make a Few $1 Billion, which I recommend reading. And, I knew this for a long time, but just something with the conversation with him just finally clicked where I'm like, my fuel source now is not like, fixing the wrongs that happened, like being born, not with money or whatever. It's like, no, I just love what I do and should be a more positive fuel source. And like me talking to myself this way is stupid. It's not, it served me when I was younger. It doesn't serve me anymore. So you should change. That's a direct, drastic change in my life as a direct result of Brad Jacobs' book and then talking to him. So 44 years of experience as an entrepreneur. Brad Jacobs will tell you he's obsessed still. He just loves deals. He like dances. He's just giddy like a little schoolgirl. I think he's 68 or 69 years old. He still wakes up every day fired up. He's like, dude, there was 8 days in a week. I'd work 8. He's just like, he can't help himself. The fourth one was Todd Graves. Okay. Yeah. Obsessed. The guy is worth $20 billion and all he does is sell chicken fingers.
That's insane.
But he just sells chicken fingers better than anybody else in the world.
And also, didn't he do a boating? He was like fishing, and that was
I can tell you stories from him. So
you found, not that you found him. He was obviously very, very successful, but nobody was really bound down at the altar of Todd Graves before you found this guy.
Because you astutely picked up what I'm actually interested in. It's like, I like people that are obsessed and do things for a long time. I'm very simple. And I don't care what that is. It could be a tech company. It could be, you're creating hardware, software. You could sell chicken fingers. It could be real estate. They nerd out and they think about things in such a deep way where then you talk to them or you read about them. It makes you like, oh, I can take what I'm doing seriously. Go back to Charlie Munger, which me and you will talk about over and over again. I think one of the most important things I ever heard Charlie Munger say, which is like he's like, oftentimes we find that the winning system in business goes ridiculously, this is the word he used, ridiculously far, minimizing and or maximizing one or a few variables. There's an extension to that idea, which I think is almost like a way to describe that idea in simpler terms, is find a simple idea and take it seriously. Todd Graves has not changed his menu. And he started the business when he was 23. He's 53 now. He has not changed the menu in 30 years. And what did he do? He came out to the West Coast, saw the success of In-N-Out. It's like, look how we're in LA right now. I'll probably go to In-N-Out after this because I haven't eaten anything today. I've just had coffee all day long. And he's like, well, if a simple menu, stripped down, very simple menu worked in cheeseburgers, why wouldn't it work for chicken fingers? And his original idea was like, I'm going to sell chicken fingers to drunk college students outside of LSU. Turns out a lot of people like fried chicken. I like fried chicken too. And I'm not a drunk college student. And then he just didn't interrupt the compounding. But I didn't find him. I saw a clip. He went on Theo Von. And this is the thing that once you, again, have this, I think everybody listening should just find people you admire and then just read their life story. And then in those books, they will talk about the people they admire and then go read their life story and just keep following that chain back and back and back. I think it's a very fascinating and a good use of your time. So I wouldn't have understood this clip I saw if I, maybe the first year I started Founders Podcast. But I was in like the 7th year. I'd read like 300 of these things. I have an idea of how these entrepreneurs think. And it's a 1-minute clip on TikTok or something. And he was talking about the fact that the simpler the menu is, it relates to even how fast he can turn over in the drive-through. And I was like, oh, so this guy understands how one decision impacts everything else, and that you should limit the amount of details and then make every detail perfect. That's how I would describe what Todd Graves has done. And then you don't interrupt the compounding, and you're worth $20 billion selling. Go to Raising Cane's. Why does a simple menu matter, right? Because when he has one restaurant and he's saving 15 or 20 seconds in order because the menu's simple, you pull up to Raising Cane's. This is your options. You can have 3 chicken fingers, 4 chicken fingers, 6 chicken fingers. When they told him you need a chicken sandwich, he's like, okay, I'm putting chicken fingers in between 2 slices of bun. There's your goddamn chicken sandwich. That's literally what he does. It's hilarious and it works. But the point was, you just show up there. It's like, do I want 3, 4, or 6? That's a 5-second decision. When you have one store, it doesn't matter. He's got 915. I think he's getting another 100 this year. He's growing faster in year 30 than he ever has. That makes a huge difference. And for him, you can see that, you can clock that in a clip. Oh, this guy knows his business. Where the opposite of that is a lot of these like fake promoting startup founders that are just lying to get to their next round, which I'm not interested in all. At all.
True. You know what's fascinating about the world's greatest founders like Steve Jobs? Steve Jobs didn't just control the product, aka the iPhone or the MacBook and the computers that you're on every day. He controlled the distribution. He controlled the back end of it. What do I mean? Well, the App Store, right? He knew that he wanted to control the way that apps got delivered to you. He wanted to actually be the entire marketplace. You want to distribute your product, but you want to make sure that you also own the distribution network. So what can you own instead? Your newsletter. That is why I'm obsessed with this company called Beehive, so much so that I invested in it. I have a newsletter that now goes out to 1 million people, and I get to control if they get my information or not. And so with Beehive, you have a founding team that is obsessed on one thing: how to get your clients to read your things. How do you get to have better open rates? How do you get to get more subscribers? How do you get better design? How do you get ads placed in there so you can get paid to even go and distribute your ideas to other people? That's why I'm obsessed with Beehive. And if you already have a newsletter, you should move to this platform. If you don't have a newsletter, you need to get one. And I've got a discount code for you on it today. If you go to beehive.com, BEEHIIV.com, and use code CODY30 for 30% off, I am going to hook you up. So just like Jobs, you own the distribution, not just the product. One makes me think of like Ray from McDonald's too. But the other day I was at this place called Pop-Up Bagels. Have you ever been to it?
No.
I can't stop going
I'm trying
back.
to limit my carbs.
Yeah, this is not
Cody.
good for you. Don't go there. Don't go there if you want a 6-pack.
I'm on camera a lot this year. Go on.
But the part that I find fascinating is the exact same thing. You can have 3 mini bagels, 6 mini bagels, or maybe you can have 12. Those are the only options. The line is always around the corner. It's this big. It's the tiniest little center that you can imagine. They give you like kind of an astronomically large 3 types of cream cheese. You could pick between each type of cream cheese. Watching it is a masterclass in business because the line is incredibly long. The bagel options are all the same. It's all open, so you can see the bagels being made simultaneously. By the time you order, they've already pulled up your bag, even in a line of hundreds of people, with your name on it. The bagels are hot the second that you get them. They're just small enough where like you want to order a few more than you probably need, so they're not the large ones. $15.75 for 3 bagels and a cream cheese. The margin must be incredible on it. And you see these people run through the business. And I just watch that and think, everybody's like, oh my God, aren't these bagels amazing? I'm like, that's the least interesting part about this business. And so it is so fascinating when you can see an entrepreneur who understands that like every business is a widget business in some way. If you can get excited about chicken fingers or bagels or whatever, you can win.
And I think the bagels are probably amazing because it's not, people are like, oh, to be a master of something, it's 10,000 hours. No, it's 10,000 iterations. And the amount of iterations they had gone through to finally perfect their product. And then the whole thing is they don't stop. So you go back to this. So like Todd Graves did it for 30 years. That dude, you talk about obsessing. I told him I was so excited. So like, I'm obsessed with podcasts. People think I love reading and I definitely do. But what I realize is like, my real obsession is podcasting. And so what happens is when I have these conversations now, I'm usually like, I don't do drugs. We were talking about this right before we started recording. And I've never done ecstasy or any kind of psychedelics, but I would have to imagine this is what it feels like to do ecstasy because I'm so wired and like high as a kite on excitement because you absorb their energy and enthusiasm for their business and it translates to you. Yep. And I was telling Todd, I was like, dude, I need like help sleeping. And a friend of mine recommended this like non-addictive sleeping medication. And he's like, what is that? I go, why? He goes, I need it too. He's like, I slept 3 hours last night. I go, why did you sleep 3 hours? Because I couldn't wait to wake up and get inside of a store. He calls his restaurants stores. And that's what he does. He travels around and like he literally 30 years in, he'll like you go to some Raising Cane's and he's working the drive-thru. His business card says fryer, cook, cashier, CEO.
God,
He does
I love
all the
that.
jobs. The fifth guest, Michael Ovitz, who now like I text and talk to all the time. And he's been an entrepreneur for 40 years. He ran CA for like 30 years. Obsessive. Like the guy almost killed himself. He was working so much. I won't go through the whole list. Sixth guest, James Dyson. He's been running Dyson for 45 years. Obsessed. Same thing. Like this, like we just went through this whole list. They either did it for at least was 2 decades to 4 to 5 decades. And when you sit down with these wiser older entrepreneurs and you hopefully listen to the podcast, they could just tell you things. They just know so much more. In many cases, they have more entrepreneurial experience than I've been alive.
100%.
Yeah, I just get a lot of energy and value.
Yesterday, I had Jeremy Zimmer on the podcast, the co-founder of UTA. And it was fascinating because I was going down the rabbit hole on him. And, he had this line about Michael Ovitz because obviously him, Ari Emanuel, Zimmer were all like, they were fierce competitors. And I was asking him, I'm like, I asked him, do you think competitors are good for you? Like, do you kind of hate them, but you're glad they exist because you make them better? And he was like, yes. But he's like, when we started UTA, Michael Ovitz, he had his foot on our fucking neck. He wanted to murder our business. And he goes, now we have a lot of respect for each other. But it is also fascinating when you go to these founders and you get to speak or listen to people who have built multi-billion-dollar enterprises that are lasting. You understand that like all the little decisions that you have, that's just a Tuesday for them. And so like, it's kind of interesting. You can see the compounding effect of like how you can handle pain as you go forward. So that's also why I like your pod.
One of the greatest maxims from a history of entrepreneurship is excellence is the capacity to take pain. And you just see this over and over again. It actually came from the biography of the founder of Four Seasons. That's where I first saw that line. But I would say with Ovitz, I would highly recommend reading his autobiography. I think it's one of the most important entrepreneur autobiographies ever written. It's called Who is Michael Ovitz? Because he talks about the regrets that he has and the stuff that he would do differently. And I really think people should avoid as much as you can working in like these zero-sum environments where in his case, like if he lost, somebody's going to be Tom Cruise's agent or this other actor's agent and only one of us can win. Yeah. And I think, and I've talked to Michael about this in private, like I think almost if he took his exact same skill set, because he essentially what is an agent? Agent is a salesperson. He was like the world's greatest agent. So it was like world's greatest salesperson and literally just moved it to the East Coast and just worked it because he was running the fund and he's been like, he's one of the greatest fundraisers I've ever seen. And he's got all these crazy connections. And I just think one, not that he made enough money. He's a multi-billionaire. He's fine over there. He would have made more money, but I think he just wouldn't have been universally hated because, he essentially monopolized the entertainment industry. I think he had something like 80% market share with all of the directors, the actors. I forgot the exact number. It's in the book, but I think he just did a service to the future generation of entrepreneurs who's like, hey, that was actually a mistake. Burning through relationships with all kinds of people was a mistake. It's something I definitely learned from. Like I am pretty obsessive with my work, but I actually think my relationships now, my deep, true friendships are more important to me, either equal to or more important than my work. And that is like a relatively new revelation for me. I thought I was an introvert. I thought, I was like a lone wolf. I thought I didn't need anybody. And I realized, oh no, I just had like low quality people around me. And like, if you can surround yourself with high quality people, hold yourself to high standards, and then they also hold you to high standards, it's like one of the greatest things about being alive. So at this point, we're like, I will literally take time away from work to deepen an existing relationship and friendship. And I think that's the stuff. I mean, I talked to John Mackey for the new show too, for another 45 years he worked on Whole Foods. And after we recorded, I wish we got this on recording, but we didn't. And he goes, he's 72. He goes, David, when you're my age, you're not going to be thinking about the 5,000th Whole Foods store. And he's very proud of building Whole Foods. You're not going to be thinking about the 5,000 Whole Foods store. You're going to be thinking about the relationship you have with the people you love. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, he's got 30 something years on me. What's the point of me having these conversations if I'm not going to change my behavior? If I just like, oh, great, I'm collecting information and not changing anything, then what is this? This is a waste of time.
I wonder though if some of this is like the right guidance for the right season. For instance, if Michael Ovitz and Jeremy Zimmer and Ari Emanuel didn't have their feet on the proverbial neck of some of their competitors early on, would they be who they are today? Like, do you have to be one way when you're young? And then as you get older, you become the wise elder, and that's when you stop going to attack the, other parties and instead kind of go together with them.
The interesting thing, and I'm somewhat skeptical of people that say they would do things differently. I wonder if they would, right?
Or does it just sound better?
Maybe you're valuing different things when you're in your 70s and 80s than you did when you're 25 or 35. So you have to figure that out, like what is actually important to you. And this is a lot of this when I'm spending a lot of time thinking about like different founder archetypes. It's something me and Daniel Eck are trying to figure, and it was his idea, just because what he realized was for him, he's like all the new entrepreneurs. If you talk to young entrepreneurs, like who do they want to be like? Everyone wants to be Elon. And before that, they wanted to be Steve Jobs. And so Daniel was the same way. And he's just like, but he tried to like do this like imitation. He's like, but wait, I'm not like this. And if you look at the actual structure of Spotify, it's much more like almost like a team as opposed to like just one visionary genius. And what Daniel's realizing, and it's been very helpful because he like definitely shapes my thinking on a lot of things, is he's like, I just think I'm a better player than coach, or excuse me, better coach than player. And Steve's a player. Elon's a player. He's just like, but I'm not like that. So then that doesn't mean you can't build a successful company, but you have to know who you are. And Daniel spent decades trying to figure out who he is. And I think that's why I'm very skeptical. Like in Sam Walton's autobiography, which again, if no one's read, you should read that immediately. He's like, yeah, I missed out on a lot of my, essentially Walmart was his entire life. He worked like a dog all the time. He did have this weird balance where he would take off in the middle of the day. He'd work on Walmart 7 days a week, but he'd take like an hour to play tennis or an hour to go hunt with his dogs in the middle of the day, but then you'd be right back on it. But, you miss out on some of your kid's childhood, time with his wife and everything else. And he's dying of cancer when he's writing that book. He knows he doesn't have much time left. And he's like, but if I'm being honest, I wouldn't really do much different. I would still do exactly what I did. And so, yeah, that's a great way you were like insight that your question was actually getting to, which is just like, do they actually mean it? If they could replay it, would they do it? They might replay it as a 70 or 80-year-old man. Would they replay it at 35, super aggressive, still trying to prove themselves? I don't know. I doubt that they would.
Do you think that you also have to surround yourself only with other people who want to win like you do? Like, is that old saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend time with, the Jim Rohnism? Like, is that true? And have you seen with the history's greatest entrepreneurs, do you need to cut people from your life that do not want to win?
This is something, it's funny. I was literally thinking about this morning. There's a line in Brad Jacobs' new book, which is hilarious, called How to Make a Few More $1 Billion.
So good. It's so good. I aspire to write that book, don't you?
Okay, so I didn't grow up with any money, right? My parents never even graduated high school, much less college, right? I was the first person in my family to graduate high school, which is a crazy thing to look back on. And I thought I was unhappy when I was younger because I didn't have money. And then you start to make money, and then you're like, why am I still unhappy? And so I am much more focused on inputs than anything else. And I think a lot of, like, there's this great book. Have you ever read Bill Walsh's book, The Score Will Take Care of Itself?
Yep.
So I think there's a lot of wisdom in that book where it's like, just do the best job you possibly can with the opportunity right in front of you. This is something that recurs in a lot of the biographies, that opportunity handled well leads to more opportunity. And we were talking earlier before we recorded that one of my closest friends is Patrick O'Shaughnessy. He's an investor, but he's more well known because he has this great podcast called Invest Like the Best. And his whole thing with me, he talks about this all the time. He almost thinks like I'm a little retarded. Yesterday, he goes, "You're going to retard Max into becoming a billionaire," because he's like, you have no like long-term plan. You just wake up every day and you like don't look for forms of leverage. You literally just obsess over trying to make a good podcast. And then you do the same thing the next day and the next day, and you've been doing it for 10 years. And like, look where it's getting you. And I'm just like, I just do what I like to do. I don't care. So if you tell me, oh, I'll never be able to write a book like How to Make $1 Billion. I never became a billionaire, but I got to do what I love to do. Like, I think the best definition, we're kind of like dancing around here, is like, how do you define success? And if 5 years from now, what does your life look like? I'm like, I have no idea. I was like, hopefully I'm doing this because I like doing this. And I just try to design a good 24 hours that I like, and then do it again and do it again. And again, I want to add value to other people's lives. And I think me making these podcasts, hopefully that has information, educational and inspiring information to help you build your business. And if I just do that over and over again, then the score will take care of, the score will take care of itself. And I guess my answer to the question is like, to what is success in general, could be 5 years from now or forever. It's like the way I legitimately think about this, and I think a lot of history's greatest entrepreneurs did, you won't find many of them that are obsessed over, I have to hit a certain net worth or I have to hit a certain market cap. I almost never hear that. Mine, I would just echo what Steve Jobs' answer to this question was when they're like, how do you define success? He's like, did I make something I'm proud of? And I think that's like really, really important. But going back to this, there's a line in the new book, How to Make a Few $1 Billion by Brad Jacobs, where he says, or How to Make a Few More $1 Billion, I should say, where he says that the people you have around you is the most important thing in your life, right? And he says it more eloquently than that, but that's the general like thing he's talking about. And one thing that you observe when you're reading about history's greatest entrepreneurs, you get to talk to some of the greatest entrepreneurs, is how small their circles are and how like they're very slow to add new people. They almost go to great lengths to vet the people they have around them, which is another fascinating thing I've been thinking about. It's almost very clannish. It's almost like very human to be like leery of other people, especially when you become, a lot of these people are well-known. They're multi-billionaires. Everybody all day long wants something from them. Like invest in my thing or become my customer, or they want to like use them for something. But I would say keeping your circles, the advice I've been given, and you kind of observe it also, is like keep your circle really, really small. Make sure everybody's a high quality individual. Not just like, it can't just be that they want to win, because there's a lot of people that are winning with, sacrificing all sense of ethics and morals. You don't want those people around you. What did Buffett and Munger say? You can't do a good deal with a bad person. But I would say, yeah, they have very high bars for who they surround themselves with, because you are going to, imitate and mimic and just be influenced by the people around you. And then the line, as far as professionally, it's like, I like the Steve Jobs line where he's like, you need to be a yardstick for quality. Most people aren't used to an environment where excellence is expected. Not like once in a while. It's like, no, our standard default is excellence. And I think this ties to a lot of what you and I have been talking about, or what we touched on. It's like, it's really hard to be excellent in 50 different things. And so what I would say a lot of these people have in common is like they focus on one or two, or basically no bigger than a handful of things to be really excellent at.
I keep thinking about how a computer in the hands of somebody like Steve Jobs or Steve Wozniak or Michael Dell has the potential to unleash the most powerful products and companies the world has ever seen. But if you had that same computer in the wrong hands, well, that's where things go sideways. In 2024 alone, there were 6 mega breaches, incidents where over 100 million records of everyday people were actually stolen. So if you think you're safe, I don't know. I think you got to think about it. Google yourself. See what comes up next. It's fascinating. It's your address, usually, your relatives, your phone number. That info can easily be collected and sold by data brokers whose entire job is turning your life into a product. When I saw how much of my personal data was floating around online, I freaked out. That's what Incogni helps with. They find the sites that collect and sell your personal information and remove it for you automatically. No emailing sketchy websites or chasing one down. And if there's something specific you really want gone, Incogni also offers these custom removals for extra coverage. So think of your data like loose change scattered across the internet. Incogni tracks it down and cleans it up. And it doesn't matter if you're a public figure or not. Everyone should protect their privacy. So go to incogni.com/bigdeal and get protected. You have a quote I like, actually, which is the greats had incredibly high personal standards. And it's a simple line. It's not that it's incredibly eloquent, but if you don't hold the standard, I've never seen a world in which a founder holds a standard that is less than what the company gives back.
Yeah, I think that'd probably be impossible.
It's impossible. And so if you know that you are the highest standard in the company, then you have this moral imperative to make sure that you are holding it as high as humanly possible. In fact, I think it probably was from you too, but there was something I was listening to about Steve Jobs and how he would talk about how your job as a CEO is to give your employees unreasonable amounts of confidence and push them to be great. And I think about that often. Like, our job is to push our people past the level in which they think that they are capable of. And if you can't do that, then you probably shouldn't be in charge. And I think that's true. Or like like Jensen Wong, who talks about like, I will pressure you into greatness.
Torture.
Torture
He
you.
says, I will
Yeah.
torture you into greatness.
Right. I think that's from you too. That you did an episode on too.
Yeah.
His belief was that that's how he became great, right?
Well, what you realize is like when you read that, he's like, I don't like to give up on people. I'd rather torture them into greatness. Is the exact line from his biography. The book is called The NVIDIA Way. I think it's written by Tae Kim, if I remember correctly. And then you realize as you read more about him, you're like, oh, he did that to himself first. He tortured himself into greatness first. What I would say is about being the ultimate authority figure. I think I find it very useful to take these ideas because we're limited to like how much we can remember. So I try to distill the basic idea down to like a maxim or aphorism, and then you contextually apply it to like your situation. But the way I would think about this is Sidney Harman, this engineer, founder of Harman Kardon, says that the founder is the guardian of the company's soul.
Oof, what a line.
Yeah. And so I think like you're the one that sets the standards. I would say some people might be listening to this and be like, oh, but I heard Steve Jobs was a jerk. One of the most important things you can read, the person that worked with Steve Jobs the longest was not anybody at Apple. It was actually Ed Catmull, the founder of Pixar. Yeah. And Ed Catmull's got this great autobiography, but also really almost like a Bible on how to make great creative work called Creativity Inc., which talks about how he started Pixar and his life story and how they approach things. There's a 20 or 30, maybe 20 page afterword in the book called The Steve We Knew. And, you know, he's like, I worked with this guy for, I don't know, I forgot, 26 consecutive years. And he talked about the maturation and how much Steve changed when he first met him to when, you know, I think there was 20, he's probably maybe 30 years old when he met him. And then Steve was in his 50s when he died. And I think that's one of the most important things to learn and to read is like, yeah, that Steve is obviously very aggressive and he could be called an asshole or a jerk. I'm not saying he wasn't even later on, but he learned how to manage and to deal with excessively talented people, and he changed over time. And that afterward, which, you know, you can read in a half hour, I think is really important to understand how he truly was, not how he's depicted, you know, in some of these stories.
Have you met a lot of incredible founders, or have you covered a lot of incredible founders that you would call nice as like the first word to describe them?
My initial answer would be no, but that's probably not true. So my personal hero, so there's three people I wanted to meet, right? And accidentally, unexpectedly, I met all three of them last year. It was James Dyson, Jeff Bezos, and Jimmy Iovine. I spent, I don't know how many hours talking to Dyson. The episode I did on the new show, David Senra, that episode is episode number 6. I don't even think we're numbering them. That was one of the best days of my life because that guy's book changed my entire life. We can go into more detail about that if you want. And it's somebody I read about. I read his first autobiography at least 5 times. I read his second autobiography at least twice. I read his history, talk about how so many of the people that are great at what they do have this love. And he says he's obsessed with the past and studying history. He wrote an encyclopedia. He considers himself an inventor, not an entrepreneur. He just became an inventor so he could continue to, he became an entrepreneur so he can continue to invent. Bezos thinks about it the same way. But James Dyson wrote a book it's called A History of Great Inventions. He literally cataloged, I don't know, there's like 100 or 200 inventions in there. He tells the story of these things. Read that book. And he was unbelievably kind and generous and witty. And, you know, to the point where there's a picture I think I posted online where I was like, afterwards, this is kind of embarrassing, but he did play a big role in my life. I was like, I got to give you a hug, dude. Like you literally changed my life. Like you encouraged me. You didn't even know who I was. And your book encouraged me not to give up when I went through 5.5 years of doing the podcast and no one gave a shit. Like there was like nobody listening. I should have quit year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and just reading that book early and just rereading. It's like, this guy's struggled for 14 years, built 5,127 prototypes. His kids grow up thinking that their dad's a loser because all they see is him failing. And that guy didn't give up. I can figure things out. It was very, very motivating for me. He was unbelievably kind. Now, how much of this is like they're just being nice to me because we're making a podcast together? I don't know. Bezos, I talked to him for 3 straight hours. Unbelievable. Now, there's crazy, obviously, when he built one of the most, if not one of the most impressive companies of all time. And there's all kinds of stories when he's 30 and he's starting Amazon that he wanted to name it Relentless. He owns relentless.com. What is that kind of personality type? And he's pushing, but, you know, very, very kind. Jimmy, same thing. Jimmy Iovine. Like, they're rough around the edges for sure, but I wouldn't say, I don't know, nice. I think they're just like mission. I guess some of my favorite entrepreneurs and if you think about your work in this way, it can help you not quit. It's just like, what is your actual mission? And no, I would not call them nice. I would say that they're driven. I wouldn't say they're assholes though. I do think like I just finished rereading Snowball, 700-page biography of Warren Buffett. I'm actually not going to do another episode on it. I think I could do a better job with his shareholder letters. So I'm going to read all of them instead. This happens quite frequently where I read like hundreds and hundreds of pages and don't use it. But I think they had this like no asshole rule that even if they could make money, they didn't want people around them like that. I would not consider them nice. No. I think in many cases they are extreme personality types and that their mission comes in front of everything else. I don't think you have to be that way. You know, I have a mission. My mission is like, I want to catalog how history's greatest entrepreneurs thought and then push that forward to the next generation. So you can say, hey, that idea, I can use that in my business, or I can use that idea. And I don't think I have to be an asshole to do that. And I'd prefer not to be.
Yeah.
And I think as I age, I think being kind, which has not come natural to me and did not come from like my family's super hot-headed and kind of mean to each other. And so you kind of learn like, I don't want to be that way.
No, I don't think that's necessary. But I do think, I mean, I don't aspire for people to call me nice, perhaps kind. But, you know, when I think about our mission at Contrarian, thinking the entire purpose of this crazy game we're playing is to be for entrepreneurs because it's miserable. It's a miserable game that we've chosen to play. Often, you know, it's hard running a business. It is very hard when it's a Friday night and you can't afford payroll and nobody else can handle it but you, and you don't even tell your spouse because they probably couldn't handle that stress and would tell you to go and do something else. And so I'm not there to be nice to anybody. I think our mission is I want to be there to say the things out loud that nobody else will tell you that I wish somebody had told me. And maybe I'm right and maybe I'm wrong, but at least you have somebody else that kind of tells you the truth. And we get to learn from all the data of the other entrepreneurs. So I
guess what I would say is like the trait they have is they're uncompromising. And so if you're uncompromising, it's going to be very hard to be described as nice.
Yeah. Do you think that entrepreneurs who go into greatness, do they ever start with the exit in mind? Are they ever like, well, I want to sell my company for this, or I want my company to be worth $1 billion?
This is the disturbing things about talking to young founders because there was never any kind of like entrepreneur like ecosystem, right? Like there is now, and there's like all these like weird incentives behind it. Actually, try to convince. What I'm interested in is like, I think about a lot about differentiation. And so there's some world-class entrepreneurs that don't do any podcasts at all. And I've tried to meet with them and try to convince them to do my new show and explain why. And a lot of this is because a lot of the content that entrepreneurs are actually consuming are actually created by investors. And so you could have incentive alignment with them, but in many cases your incentives are misaligned. And we should just think about that. And what's disturbing about that is how much of it is about start, scale, sell. And as we just discussed, like I'm interested in like create the people that created something that made somebody else's life better. So we can step back. What is a business? The best definition of the best answer to that question, what is a business? I actually heard from Richard Branson. And he says, all a business is an idea that makes somebody else's life better. And so there's a ton of tech companies right now and things are being invented all the time. Is that making people's life better? No, you're making a shit ton of money, which, okay, now you're rich. That's great. But you know what you're doing is not good for the world and you don't care. And so my whole thing is like, I'm interested in people that made a product that makes somebody else's life better. And it could be Spotify is maybe the best app on my phone besides one of the AI assistants, right? Made my life better. So I'm glad that the team there makes all, they're worth all the money they're worth. Going to Raising Cane's. I can't eat every day because I don't want to be fat, but like that 15 minutes of eating some great fried chicken, that just made my life a little bit better. You see what I mean here? It doesn't matter 100%. The scale. It could be an app. It could be, I think Spotify's worth, I don't know, $100 billion today, or it could be this guy making chicken fingers in a box and then just doing it forever and not doing it for, to make a lot of money to start, scale, sell. But when I talk to young entrepreneurs, it's like a lot of them start out with that thing where it's like, well, I can get acquired by this company and I can make this money. And it's just like, you get to choose the game you want to play, and that's great. And guess what? If you didn't start out with money and then you created wealth for yourself, your family, and your employees, that's admirable too. It's just not the game I'm interested in. The game I'm interested in is like, you couldn't pay me to stop. What I'm interested in is like, what is the business? What is not your first business? What is your last business? Yeah. The business that you want to work on forever.
Yeah, it's so funny. Somebody was asking me the other day. I can't remember. I did a podcast this week. Oh, and she said, "Why haven't you taken investors?" She had taken investors, whatever. And I said, "Because you got to pull this thing out of my cold dead fingers."
Yeah.
Like now, will I always have to be in front of the TV or whatever it is we're doing here? Like, no, I actually don't care about fame at all. I find it a really useful tool to do the things we want to do in the world. It's just a different type of leverage, but you don't have to pull it out of my cold dead fingers. I love this game. Do I love it all day, every day? Of course not. But I think that's where people get confused, that idea of like passion versus like, I don't know what you would call it, relentlessness or whatever, where you find that thing that you're just so obsessed with the game, you can't stop. And my passions are different. I like smutty fairy books. That's a passion.
What is a smutty fairy book?
Oh, you're really outside the zeitgeist of women, huh? Now, do you know what the best-selling books are of all time?
50. Okay, so this was hilarious. So
You
like
probably,
50,
of course you do.
You like 50 Shades of Grey.
No,
Is that what you mean?
no, that's
Oh,
not
okay.
a fantasy. There's no fairies in sight, David.
Okay, we said
You got it.
smutty. I didn't know if it was like, this turned sexual. I didn't know what was going on here.
Well, they are sexual. It's actually a giant asset class. I should figure out how to invest in this thing. But obviously, the OGs, we've got like Harry Potter, not sexual, but fantasy. But there's this huge ecosystem for
So wait,
women.
50 Shades of Grey meets
Plus-
Harry Potter.
Literally. And so they're everywhere. And it is it's the number one selling book category.
So this was crazy because, obviously love books. I read mostly old books, but I think it was our mutual
Have you
friend.
ever read ACOTAR?
No.
A Court of Thorned Roses?
No.
The YouTube comments on this are going to be hysterical.
Oh God.
Guys, let's
Maybe
find where David lives and send him some
Don't
smut
do
books.
that.
It's
Please don't do that. No, maybe I should do an episode on one of these. But the
should.
funny point, I think it was Morgan Housel that told me this. Our mutual friend Morgan Housel, who just sold 10 million copies, who's now just hit 10 million copies sold of Psychology of Money.
Yep.
Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. I
love him.
absolutely love him.
Me too.
And I'm pretty sure he's the one that told me this. He's like, "Do you know what the best-selling book of the 2000s were? Maybe it's 2010s. That decade. I have no idea." He goes, 50 Shades of Grey. I was like, "Oh,
Oh, yeah.
okay. I haven't read it."
Yeah.
He goes,
Twilight before that.
No, it gets worse.
What?
Or maybe better, depending on if you're into this. He goes, "What was the second best-selling book of that decade?" I don't know. He goes, "The sequel to 50 Shades of Grey." I'm like, damn, there's a lot of pent-up demand for this again. He goes, "What was the third best-selling book of the decade?" I go, "There's no way. Was there the trilogy?"
Trilogy.
Yeah, he's like, "The third version of 50 Shades of Grey."
Wow.
Yeah, it was an interesting fact that.
Well, now we have more of a fragmented industry. There's a lot. But there's this woman, Sarah J. Maas, and she was like basically came from nowhere to write this series of books that are just proliferating among women.
How did we get there from start, scale, sell?
Yeah,
though?
I don't know.
So
natural progression,
Yeah, so
really.
to go back to that, it's like finding out why people are doing what they're doing, I think is actually really important. So I ask that. And usually one of the things that we want to try to map out like the founder archetypes for, and this is Daniel's idea, which I think is really smart. He's like, people think about like founder market fit. And he actually thinks the more interesting idea is founder problem fit. And knowing your archetype and then knowing other archetypes of other entrepreneurs that came before you and that match your archetype would be very useful. So make sure you're attacking the right problem. And so
What do you mean by archetypes? Have you fleshed that out yet? Where you
so
know?
I need to name them, but
Okay.
like think about like all the different. And this is not a science, obviously. It's just a rough framework to figure things out. But if you think about all these like personality assessments, like Enneagram is very popular.
Yeah.
You know the Enneagram?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it's very popular.
16 personalities.
Yeah,
We
it's-
use a lot of those for hiring.
Yeah, it's a lot of companies do this. And there's culture index, there's all these other tools that companies use. The Enneagram is very popular with like a lot of my founder friends. And just not only to know like what type they are, but also who like their partners could be or who they'd work well together. And it's just, again, it's not like, oh, I'm an 8 and you're a 3 and this does well together, so I only look for 3s or whatever the case is. It's just like, okay, well, there's like whatever archetype Steve Jobs is different from the archetype of a Daniel Ek. So how are they different? What are the kind of characteristics? Who do they work well together? And then you now have 400 entrepreneurs that you've studied intensely, and can we match them all? And there might be 5 archetypes, there might be 10. We're not actually sure. But I think the important part here is that they don't, to go back to your original question, it's like, it's not, some people do this because they just want to make billions of dollars. I have a lot of friends that work in like New York in PE, and I find them refreshing. It's not my game, but because their whole thing is like,
I have never heard anybody call somebody in PE refreshing before,
no,
which
because
I find
they're just
amazing.
like, they're like, they have funny ways they think about it. They're like, VC gets all the attention, PE gets all the money.
That is
it's just
true.
It's such a huge industry. And they're like, listen,
true.
the fact that VCs tell you that their customers are founders, he goes, they're goddamn liars. The LPs are our customers because they give us money. The founder's not giving us money. And he goes, I exist to make my LPs richer. And that's what I mean. It's not my game, but I like that they're not lying and they know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's honest.
That's what I mean about that. So that is their game. Their problem is take a big pile of money and make it into a bigger pile of money. I am not the right founder for that because I don't give a shit about that. Yeah. So I like this idea of founder, problem, fit, right? I have this I stumbled onto the problem that I'm solving, which is everybody's focused on, what today's founders are saying or experiencing or their opinions, where it's like, we have 200 to maybe 300 years of the market economy, and you have hundreds, maybe you have thousands of really great entrepreneurs that lived their whole lives, ran all kinds of experiments, learned a bunch of stuff, and then people put down their main ideas in a book. Maybe somebody should go and dig through these books, find good ideas, and then push it down the generation. That's just a weird problem that fit me because I'm an introvert and I'd prefer to sit in a room by myself, read.
I mean, I was talking to Tony Robbins the other day. The amount of money they make, he owns part of DISC Profile.
I don't know what that is.
It's kind of like 16 personalities, except think about like a more flushed out version that really helps you if you're a hiring manager for the most part. And then they have like corporate licensing or whatever. And so we use that in a lot of our companies because if I'm like, listen, you could have a janitor who's like an exceptional fucking janitor. They're so good at their job. But they could potentially move all the way up to senior leadership if you understand that that person is meant for more. But if your company doesn't know how to find them or source them, you have all this hidden talent inside your business. And one of the things that keeps me up at night is thinking about the people who work for me. One, if they're not like working enough and doing things to add value to the company, I don't like that. But also if I'm not doing enough to help them add value to the company and thus make more money in their life and all that. So anyway, but it's a big business. So it would be super interesting if you had that for founders and entrepreneurs, because I do think we're all mimetic.
Yeah,
you wouldn't monetize it?
No.
Come on.
No. Okay, so we should talk about this because, again, I think most people think, first of all, starting another business, like my whole thing is find a simple idea and take it very seriously, which is the Charlie Munger quote.
But you could just invest in it. Tell Daniel to have an operator. No.
No
investing either?
Very little.
This is stressful for me. I can't believe Patrick probably and Morgan just yell at you all the time about this. Yeah. Okay.
Morgan doesn't because Morgan doesn't invest in anything. What do you think? All his money is in indexes.
I know. I felt so pathetic listening to him because he's like, I'd be like, tell me about one unhinged things you bought. And he's like, I did buy a house once. I'm like, fucking never mind. New question.
Oh, no, the renovations on the Housel estate.
Okay.
Which again, probably is good for marital bliss.
100%.
So maybe that's not an expense. One, I think open sourcing this is more important to the degree that other people find a value. And also, like, I'm very, very, it took me, there was probably 3 or 4 years of people around me, very close friends, just like, you should start another podcast, talking to founders, you idiot, do it. And I said, no. It's like, it's like water on a rock. That's like, you want me to do something, you have to suggest it. And I'm going to say no. And it's going to take you years to break me down. And then I'm going to come to you and be like, I have this great idea and it'll be your idea. This is not even a joke.
Sounds like how husbands and wives work.
This has happened to so many people in my life. They now know. It's like Inception. They're like, if I want David to do something, I need to put in the idea now.
Whispered his iPhone.
It really works. There's a great line in I think one of Buffett's shareholder letters, which I'm rereading right now, where he says, loss of focus is what worries Charlie and me the most. And so I think me starting another business that's outside of my life's mission, which is founders, and then my new obsession and passion, which is talking to entrepreneurs on the new show, I'm full. I work 7 days a week. I don't have any time. Like I'm not doing anything else. And I think this is a misconception where, or at least hopefully I can, like, to the degree that I have any influence on this, it's like people think entrepreneurs are obsessed with money. I would argue they're obsessed with control. And that if you're talented and you're working on a valuable product or problem and you solve the problem for other people and you maintain control, you wind up with the money. But the very first person that I met that was renowned from the podcast was Sam Zell. Episode 269 of Founders is the autobiography.
He's my favorite investor of all time.
And he wouldn't call himself an investor. So we'll talk about this. So I'm almost positive it's episode 269. It's the autobiography of Sam Zell, which is incredible. People should read it. It's called Am I Being Subtle? I think is the title. And I put that out and he listened to it and he he liked it so much he asked to meet me. And I love the fact that somebody in their 80s was starting to listen to podcasts because what is he? At the fundamental, he's a learner. He's a learning machine. And so I had a 2-hour lunch with him before he died. And then we were scheduled to have dinner. I was going to have a dinner with him in Miami. And he wanted to have dinner and then me do an episode called I Had Dinner with Sam Zell and talk about the stories. And then I think the day before the dinner, it was canceled. They said, Sam's not flying down from Chicago. He's sick. I thought he had like COVID or something. 3 weeks later, he's dead. Yeah. He, from cancer.
Fuck.
And so, but he was spending his last, I probably saw him 8 months before he died. He was flying all over the world at his expense, just sharing everything he learned with entrepreneurs, having dinner with entrepreneurs, talking at conferences and events for entrepreneurs. And, that guy was as liquid as the day is long. His company was very, very interesting, where it's like technically a family office, but it was his own money and he made all the investment decisions and he never was going to spend the money to begin with. He told me, I didn't know he was sick with cancer. He obviously didn't share that with me, that he's going to be doing deals until he died. Guess what? He did deals until the day he died. The day before I saw him, or the day before I saw him, I think he calls them family businesses. Mm-hmm. He's like, I forgot the number. It's like 75% of this company for $300 million and they still run things on a fax machine. Like he just loved doing deals, loved it. But he had a bunch of pieces of advice, which I would summarize. The main piece of advice, and we're going to tie back to the money, was, let me see if I can remember this correctly. His whole thing, and he was not subtle at all. So he was kind of like, he was very nice to me, but he wasn't like, I have a suggestion for you, Dave. He's like, do this, do this. I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to you. So he says, go for freedom. He's like, if you keep your freedom, you can control what you work on. If you control what you work on, you can work on what you love. If you love it, you'll do it all the time. If you do it all the time, you'll get really good at it and money will come as a result. So again, it goes back to your question. Do they start with, I want $1 billion exit. I want a certain amount of ARR. I want a certain market cap. No, his whole thing is just like, I like doing deals and I do them all the time. I did them for 60 years and turns out I'm really good at doing deals. But the money part was fascinating because he's like, listen, he goes, I know all the rich guys. This is exactly what he says. He goes, I know all the rich guys. And he goes, they're all guys. And he goes, you would be surprised at how many of them are miserable. He's like, what's the point of having all this money if you're not having fun? And he goes, and he ties this to your financial decisions. He's like, the things that you own eventually own you. And there was a bunch of funny parts because he was hilarious. He was just like you saw him on CNBC. This is exactly how he is. I love people like this where there's no separation between their public and their private persona. And he goes, I have all the money in the world. He goes, I have my place in Chicago and my compound in Malibu. That's the word he used. Remember, he's like 82, maybe 81, maybe 80, 81 when I met him. And he wanted me to see his Malibu house. And he hands me his phone. So I think I'm going to look at pictures that he took on his iPhone of his Malibu house. No, he Google image searched Sam Zell Malibu house.
That's incredible.
Yes. And so he goes, I spend 38 weekends a year at my place in Malibu. I have my place in Chicago. And he goes, everything else I rent. He goes, I don't own anything else. He goes, I own a jet, which I'll get to in a minute. He goes, I have my 2 houses and my jet. And he goes, shortly after Thanksgiving and then up until like Christmas, he would take him and his like whole extended family. It sounded like there was like 30 people on this trip, 40 people on the trip to this like small village in France. And he said something funny. He goes, I could buy the whole village. And he goes, I don't. I rent it because I only think about it when I need it. And then when I leave, it's somebody else's problem. He's like, just eliminate. You don't want to be thinking about these things. And he goes, David, this is the funny part. He goes, there's only one true luxury in life. He goes, try to get to private jet money.
Yeah.
Because literally, he goes, these guys drive themselves crazy. He goes, the difference between a $10 million house, this is what he said, the difference between a $10 million house and a $30 million house is like negligible. He goes, they waste their time doing things they don't like to buy slightly nicer versions of the same shit. He's like, there's only one true luxury. Get to the jet. The jet actually makes a difference. And he said he uses his jet like, I think an average of like 3, if you did the math over the entire year, he would average like 3 hours a day. So he really used his jet. Wow. Yeah.
You know what I loved about him? I loved the Zell's Angels.
Yeah.
I loved, like, there's this other guy who used to work with George Soros back in the day, like back when he was just investing in things in hedge fund land. And he wrote a book called The Venture Capitalist and Investment Biker. Oh my God, I'm forgetting his name, which is so embarrassing. It was actually, I didn't even have a podcast. I made up a podcast like a billion years ago, like before they were cool, maybe 50. I don't even know. Yeah, I guess it would have been 15 years ago, just to have a phone call with this guy who wrote these 2 books. He was in China at the time, Jim Rogers. And Jim Rogers at the time was like one of the best hedge fund managers of all time. Him and George, that was like in the first couple of years of the Quantum Fund, I believe, and they had absolutely crushed it. But he left it all to go adventure around the world, invest, and tell stories about it. He had like this yellow Mercedes that he put these huge tires on and traveled all the way through Africa on his like top down Mercedes. This is like back in the day, and made investments all over the world and all over Latin America. And I ran a business before in Latin America. So I just found that so weird. And what I love about a lot of these people, Sam Zell included, is they're weird. Like he had a motorcycle club, basically, like this kind of old, I don't know, it looks pretty stodgy guy running around on a motorcycle when he was a billionaire by then.
Like going on like motorcycle trips in like Mongolia and stuff. Like, and danger
With vests.
Yes, somewhat dangerous. Smoking weed on the side of the road. He would talk about that. He has some funny lines. I mean, he said some stuff. I don't even know if it's true. He's like, I invented business casual. I was like, I didn't know that, but okay. Like, it's like, yeah, I was the first person. He was just funny, but he wasn't. I didn't mean it in an arrogant way. He was just so likable. And I think this is another thing. The value. This is why I think I would avoid assholes. And we go back to do the people have to be assholes? And some of this, I'm sure I'm going to have some assholes on the new show. Like I'm interviewing, or not even interviewing. I think about really having conversations with some of these people. But as far as like building relationships with, it's like, I just like likable people. Like I like nice people. Obviously, Zell obviously had an ego, but he wasn't saying these things in like an arrogant way. He was just likable. And I think there's so many, especially in the tech industry, where they're personality deficient. And it's just like, there's a benefit, a life benefit of just one, being a good conversationalist, like a good hang, and just being easy to be around and being likable. And one of the ways I think to do that is to be intensely interested in a subject. Like I'm not particularly passionate about chicken fingers, but I like that Todd Graves is. And hearing him talk about like, he even broke it down like what stage of rigor mortis that the chicken has to be in. You wouldn't think you wouldn't even think you'd be interested in that, but I'm interested in that he was interested in it. And therefore he is fascinating to me. And I think the biggest way to be likable and to be like somebody that people want to be around is just like, you have to be intensely interested in something, because the most interesting people are the most interested. They're like passionate about weird things. I just heard Alex Honnold, the guy from Free Solo, say, they're like, what do you think about fame? He's like, I think it's just a means to an end. It's a way for me to climb all the time and not have a job. And that documentary is fascinating. Like, I don't want to live in a van. I don't want to do the hand workouts he does and eat with a spatula and all the stuff he does, but he's just so into it that you just can't help it. Like, you gravitate towards people like that. Yeah. And Zell was the same way.
Yeah. Obsession is kind of contagious, isn't it? Like if you're obsessed with something, you can make anybody else get a little bit of that obsession.
I would say passion is infectious.
That's a good
And
one.
I think this is what I mentioned earlier, where I don't do any drugs. I don't do ecstasy. I never would. But this is the way I feel after talking to any of them, Michael Dell, James Dyson. You're just like, wow, like you took whatever passion you have for your business and you gave it to me. And now that charged me up to like go and apply that to whatever I'm working on. And this is beautiful, like virtuous, flywheel or cycle.
One of my favorite mentors said a line to me that was hard for me to hear, which is that like your business is more likely to die because of you and the complex things that you do, as opposed to external forces and the things they do to you. And so he's like, complexity is the great killer of all things. And then he's like, the problem is that through life, everything gets more complex. As you get older, you have more stuff, you have responsibilities, you have aging, you have all these things. So life like kind of never gets simpler. It always gets more complex. And you have a guy on your podcast, or you covered someone on your podcast, Rick Rubin, who talks, I want to talk about how he doesn't call himself a producer. He calls himself something else. Yeah. And to tell that story, because it's one that I think we all have to internalize a little bit more. You don't necessarily have to do less. You have to do more better.
There's something that you said that this is how, again, reading all these books kind of works, like how my mind works now, where the advice that you were given echoes this advice, this guy named David Packard, who was the founder of HP. And HP, again, is this big old stodgy company. By the time it was the influencer who influenced the influencers. So like all Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, all these other people that went out and built great technology companies in the 70s and 80s looked to these guys before them, right? Just like the founders of Intel looked to it was one of the first technology companies in Silicon Valley in the 1950s or something like that. And he has this great line that more businesses die of indigestion than starvation. It's like they just try to do too much. They essentially sabotage themselves. This is also advice that Michael Dell gave, I think on the podcast, maybe in private, But he's like, most founders just sabotage themselves. Like, you're not taken out by competition. You just can't handle your success, or you took your foot off the gas, or you just did something that you honestly sabotage yourself, as opposed to like being taken out by a superior product from a competitor. And so Rick Rubin's point was just like, he has this thing called a ruthless edit, which I love. He's like, okay, we're working on albums, 10, 12, 15 songs. We made 50. Now we're going to pick the 5 that we absolutely cannot live without. And so you force yourself, you design within constraints, which a lot of the history's greatest founders do. They found it very valuable to design within constraints. And these are the 5. Now, before we add any other ones, it has to at least match the quality of this. So what's number 6? It takes a long time. And it's really hard to get to 10. And maybe you have to throw out the other 45 songs and you haven't done enough. So now you have to do more. And this is just very, very common, where it's like less is more, but to get less, you have to do more. And one thing that I love that is tied to the bagel place you mentioned and Raising Cane's, that we talked about this, or even look at like the Apple II, like the first very successful product that commercially successful product that Steve Jobs and Apple made, where it's like, you just have to do one thing really, really great. Just one thing. And that's usually because you made something easier for other people. And there is this weird paradox in humanity where I think we abhor complexity and we crave simplicity, but we make everything that's simple complex over time. And so knowing that there's a great line from Sam Walton's autobiography that's about this. Walton is telling a story in the autobiography, but really it's a metaphor where all of the products are getting shipped from the Walmart distribution centers into the stores. And then he found that many of them were mispriced. So then they start this thing where now there's this other layer of these people that go around with these like scanning devices and making sure, verifying that the price in the system is what the price says here. And his whole point was just like, we're adding layers of complexity when we should just, he's like, you have to beat bureaucracy back across the line. It's going to creep and you beat it back. It's going to creep and then you beat it back. He goes, the solution is not scanners. The solution is doing it right the first time, but we can't help ourselves. We made it more complex. And so he looked for these kind of weird decisions that people make where it's like the solution is just doing it right, not overcomplicating it, which is, again, I think more in line with like human nature. We just love to complicate things, even if we abhor complexity.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other part is when you have more complex things, you feel like you've accomplished more. And so, I see it a lot of time in our companies. It's like, well, I hit all these 47 activities today. It's like, yeah, but you didn't do the one thing that really fucking mattered that needed to be done more than anything else. Because it was harder than doing those 47 things. Because sometimes to put that one thing on the list doesn't feel as good as doing the 47.
Larry Ellison, there's like 3 good biographies of Larry Ellison, and in at least 2 of them, he's fighting with his assistant because she's like, there's 1,000 things we have to do. He goes, no, there's 4. And I'm only going to focus on these 4 and ignore every single thing else because all the value, if I can solve these 4 problems or these 3 problems or these 2 problems, this one problem, that's actually what I do. And the rest of the stuff can be ignored. But the reason I tied it to like the bagel shop that you mentioned earlier and Todd Graves, his simple product, and Rick Rubin's point was just like, if you look at the work that he did, where he says like, I'm not a producer, I'm a reducer. You came in with this body of work. There's in essence, in this course, a lot of value. You overcomplicated it. You need somebody else with other eyes to see, hey, we can cut away everything else and make it to like, what is the thing that we cannot delete, that we have to have? And this is why a lot of the stuff that was produced or reduced by Rick Rubin 30 years ago, you can listen to today, still sounds good. Because he goes, hey, 50 years ago, a guy with a good voice strumming a guitar and singing sounds good. So if it sounded good 50 years ago, if it sounds good today, highly likely it'll sound good 50 years from now. Same thing with a piano. A piano and a beautiful woman's voice sounded good 50 years ago, sounds good today, will sound good 50 years from now. And I think what's happening is like when you hit on this essence, the reason people respond to it is because like you essentially made the decision for them, right? You eliminated everything that didn't have to be there. You only have the essential. It's the same reason why he talks about in that book. I would recommend listening to a song called Hurt by Johnny Cash, which was a cover. I think Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails is the first person to do it. He was like 21 when he wrote the article or wrote the song, sorry. And then Johnny Cash is like 70 when he's singing it. And you listen to that, and Johnny's been dead for years. And it still sounds good today. And the song's probably, I don't know, 15 years old or something like that. It still sounds good today. Just like the going and eating at Raising Cane's or the bagel place you mentioned earlier. It's just like, you had a good experience there, right? These things have been going on in Raising Cane's case 30 decade or 30 years, he didn't interrupt the compounding. That what you see there, you're like, oh my God, the guy's worth $20 billion, has 915 stores. But he's like, he just didn't, time carried all the weight. Time did all the work. He just did the same thing every day and he waited for the world to catch up. And if you build something that's great, then what do humans do? You can't keep things that are great to yourself. When you see a great movie, listen to a great podcast, meet a great friend, go to a great restaurant, it's impossible to not tell other people about it. It's just what happens. And the problem is this will tie back to almost everything we've been talking about today, which is like, that's why it's so detrimental. And you see the success in most entrepreneurs' lives happen multiple decades in, because they didn't interrupt the compounding. You had to wait for time to do most of the work. And that's why the start, scale, sell doesn't work unless you just care about money and you get the money and then you go, do something, sit on the beach or whatever the case is. But my point is the people that we're obsessed, you have to do something. Let's say somebody comes and buys everything from you tomorrow for whatever. What are you going to do the next day? You're going to start something else.
100%.
You're not the personality type that can build a very valuable company is not the kind that can sit around and do nothing.
It's also, I think, incredibly difficult to simplify things. Often I'm sure you found this too, but you're taking, I don't know, a 700-page book like Snowball and trying to synthesize it into one episode. That is actually quite a complex thing to do. You have a lot of decisions you have to make. You have to pull the core or soul out of it or the lessons that you want out of it. And I think, sometimes about the stuff we do on the internet, like we'll try to, explain acquisitions in some way, shape, or form in a really simplistic way, which is actually incredibly difficult to do. Even the vernacular in finance is tribal knowledge, a lot of nouns and vowels in the words that don't need to be there. And so making something about even a word like acquisitions, which some people have a hard time spelling, and simplifying it is actually quite difficult. And so, we talk about that a lot when we invest is, I think I stole it from Warren Buffett back in the day, or it might've been Zell. I think it was Zell. Zell basically said, if I can't, like one of his employees came in with like a big folder on one of the deals that he wanted to do and was like, here's the brief on doing this deal. And he was like, tell it to me in a couple sentences. He's like, I can't. He's like, then write it on a page. He's like, I can't do that. And he's like, if we can't understand the deal in a page, we shouldn't do the deal if the only way to explain it is through a folder. And I think about that now, it's like,
Zell learned that from Jay Pritzker. So my friend that I mentioned earlier, my friend Rick, was mentored by Sam Zell for 25 years. And Sam took an interest in him when Rick was like in his 20s. And what he would say is like, I was in my 20s and a nobody. And Zell just decided he liked me. And so he took me all around the world. And we would like work on deals together. But Rick would try to, I think there's a great line in this book I just read by Kevin Kelly. It's called Excellent Advice for Living, Wisdom I Wish I'd Known Earlier. Yeah. And he says, one of the most counterintuitive rules of the universe is the more you give, the more you get. And so Rick built a relationship with Sam by giving, by trying to, hey, here's this undervalued company in Egypt we might want to look at, or look at this deal over here. And basically just doing an active service, right? But what would happen is Rick would bring him a deal and be like, okay, here's exactly what you're saying. Here's the 10 things that we have to solve or whatever. And Zell would look at it and be like, number 5, that's the only thing. If we solve number 5, everything else falls in line. And Zell talks about this in his autobiography, that he was mentored by Jay Pritzker, who was one of the best deal makers, right? Living, probably a decade, maybe 2 decades older than Sam Zell at the time. And Sam would do exactly what Sam would do to Jay, what Rick was doing to Sam, which is I'd come bring him a deal and Jay would just look at it. It's like, there's only one important thing here. You have a list of 7 things. It's not 7. It's just this one thing. And if we take care of this one thing, everything else will fall in line. So it's that simplification. This is why I said it's not 10,000 hours, it's 10,000 iterations. Because how many deals by the time, you can't do that when it's your first deal, your second deal, your 5th deal. Jay had probably looked at 10,000 deals by that time, 5,000 deals by that. He just understood it in a way. What we call intuition is really just like the sum of your experiences and your subconscious kind of explaining to you. You can't even, this is what I learned from Rick Rubin too, when you just mentioned really hard to take a 700-page biography and distill it down to its essence in an hour-long podcast. And people are always just like, well, how do you do it? And it's just like, it's a skill because I've done it for 10 years. Go listen to episode 1, 2, 5, 10, 25, 50. They probably suck compared to what I can do now because I didn't understand that like I had to take time to train my intuition to do this. Rick Rubin would tell you the exact same thing, where he's constantly critiquing the stuff he produced and created when he started his record label. He started producing when he was in his dorm room. He's in his 60s now, still doing it. He's just like, I didn't have enough training on my intuition. And you'll see this in all kinds of different domains. I'm reading Roger Federer's biography called The Master right now. It's an excellent book. And one of the things that he really annoys him is that everybody talks about how effortless his game looks. It's so smooth. It's beautiful. He's like, yeah, you know how long it took me to make it look smooth and beautiful? I wasn't born with his ability to play. Another great example of this is that I empathize with, and I think Rick Rubin does, and I would say Steve Jobs does, is people ask Steph Curry what he thinks about when he's shooting. And he goes, absolutely nothing. It's just, I've shot this exact shot 100,000 times. And so me thinking about it would make it worse. There's a great story in Johnny Ives' biography, which is really good. And I think it's episode 178 of Founders. And he talks about the difference, the contrast between the way Google's run and Steve Jobs ran Apple. And, you know, when Google would do 200 A/B tests on what color this button should be. And they were making, remember the iMacs, the old school iMacs where like it had a big, like, this is when computers were big and fat and thick.
It was like orange or
and
blue.
They had a handle, and then they decided they were going to make them all different colors.
Yeah.
And Johnny says that there was no like focus group. They didn't A/B test anything. He says Steve came down to the design center, and me and Steve looked at the colors, and in 30 minutes we picked every single color. 30 minutes, just taste, and those were the colors that shipped. That was Steve's intuition for 30 years as an entrepreneur by the time he got to that point, to be able to trust. You shouldn't be trusting your judgment, trusting your intuition when you have to prove to yourself that you should trust it. And Steve did the work necessary to trust his intuition and trust his judgment. I think you're going to see that in a lot of fields: music, entrepreneurship, sports. You just see it over and over again.
I think a lot about what skills will matter in the future with how fast technology is changing, with what's happening in the world right now with AI. And it does seem like this idea of taste seems tantamount. What are you thinking about what's going on right now in the world of AI? What do you think the greatest entrepreneurs are thinking? Does this matter? Is this always just the same thing? Is there always just some new industrial or technological revolution and there's opportunity in every market and we need to not be defeatist about it? Like, how do you think about this?
If you agree that the best definition or a great definition of a business is what Richard Branson said, that all the businesses is an idea that makes somebody else's life better, there is always infinite ways to make somebody else's life better. So therefore there's always infinite opportunities, in my opinion. With that said, I do think you do not ignore technological phenomenon and technological revolutions. We're obviously going through one now. I think you should use so what I do is I just force myself to learn and to build these into my workflow now. So I'm sure there's going to be AI generated podcasts that can do exactly what I do. 100%. I would imagine that's going to happen relatively soon, if it's not, this year, next year, 5 years from now. And so just to use the tools, the technology, because all technology is my favorite definition of technology is from Peter Thiel in his book 0 to 1. Technology is just a better way to do something. And so I'm just using them to be better at making a podcast, and hopefully that podcast and that information in the podcast makes somebody else's life better. See how it connects? Now, I think the mistake when you're looking back at history is the only thing constant is change. And technology is never going to stop. And I think the smartest ones took advantage of it. So think about one of my favorite times in industries to study is I've done 13 different episodes on the early American automobile founders. So Henry Ford, Billy Durant, founder of GM, Henry Leland, the founder of Cadillac, the Dodge brothers, all the way down to some component makers like Albert Champion, who made the spark plugs everybody used, Alfred Sloan, who made the ball bearings of all these companies. It's just very fascinating. It's they all knew each other. They were all in one spot. And this was just happening in Detroit in 1900. If you were a young mechanically inclined man that were interested in that industry, you better get your ass to Detroit right away. And one of the most fascinating things I realized was Billy Durant had there's multiple ways to succeed, right? So Henry Ford had one idea. He's I want to make the car for the everyman. He had literally one idea his entire career, and he didn't know how to do it yet. He's cars are luxury items. They're hand built. They're $6,000 when, we're making not even $1 an hour. I'll never be able to afford doing. I want to mass produce. I want to invent the mass production of the automobile. So then I can, the worker making the automobile can actually afford the automobile, which was never, the people making the cars could not even afford the cars. That was his one idea. He was wildly successful, one of the richest people on the planet as a result of that idea. Billy Durant also succeeded. He got kicked out of GM twice, but that's a story for another day. And his idea was I'm just going to make a car conglomerate. and I'm going to buy all the early brands, put them together in General Motors. General Motors is today. But the fascinating about Billy Durant is, what was he working on before he worked in the car industry? He essentially built one of the most successful carriage companies. So he was making carriages that horse-drawn carriages. He just took the idea that was working for horse-drawn carriages, realizing, my business is in trouble with these cars running around. Maybe I should just take the same skill set and ideas and apply it to this new domain. So the future is always going to be unpredictable. I love people going around. It's like, we're only not that far from New Year's, and everybody's like, here's my predictions for 2026. And I just laugh. It's just like, all I do is all day long is read. If you read history, you just have very smart people making all these kind of predictions about the future that don't come true.
Oh yeah.
Humans don't really have great, predictive ability, generalized predictive ability. You can identify a trend or an interesting idea in an industry that you're paying attention to, and then build a business around that insight. I'm not saying you can't do that. That's what Billy Durant just did. But the answer to your question is like, I want to learn these tools because I'm interested in technology. I'm interested in finding tools that make my business better, right? And then I'm just going to do the best job with the opportunities in front of me. And I'm going to do that every single day. And the score will take care of itself. I'll get what I deserve out of life. But there's just impossible to know what's happening. I do think this is like, I think reading right now, like about the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s, I think reading about the early compute industry would be interesting. There'd be analogies there. I talked to Bezos about this. Bezos's analogy for this, because he's all he thinks about is AI all day long now, is he calls it these thin horizontal enabling layers. And he thinks AI is more akin to electricity than it is to anything else. The internet was a thin horizontal enabling layer. Electricity was a thin horizontal enabling layer. AI is a thin horizontal enabling layer. And he goes, once you new thin horizontal enabling layer is invented, it goes everywhere. Like electricity, like they weren't thinking they were going to install electricity. They're thinking, I want lighting. And guess what? If it's useful for that, how many other inventions have now plug into electricity that we could have never possibly predicted? Same thing with the internet. The origins of the internet. What did they think it was going to be used for? And then they could not have possibly predicted all the millions, hundreds of millions of different inventions and things that you could do on top of that. And so his belief is that AI is going to be the exact same way, where it's like the intelligence as a service is going to go everywhere, and you're going to invent countless other ways. There's no way to predict all the different inventions that humans are going to utilize this tool for. And it won't be. I talked to a lot of some of these AI. They think it's like the last invention. It's like, it's not the last invention. Like humans are going to invent, assuming we're around, are going to constantly invent more and more things.
Do you ever sometimes take a pause and just think, holy shit, what is my life that I get to talk to Elon Musk, all my heroes, all these people consistently?
No. Here's the thing. I think thinking like that, I have this maxim I got from Conor McGregor. Have you ever seen this documentary? It's on Netflix. It's called Notorious.
Oh, it's incredible.
I'll tell you the maxim first, and then tell you like one of the lessons that he didn't even adhere to himself, which is like, if you go to sleep on a win, you wake up with a loss. And that documentary is incredible because, he's literally living at home, has no money. I think he's working as a plumber's assistant or something. He's somehow had the foresight to have a camera crew follow around what at this point was just like kind of like a loser, right? Chasing a dream, but nothing to point. He had this, there's another maxim, belief comes before ability, which I hate when people are like, oh, you shouldn't have so much self-belief. They tell us entrepreneurs, like, generate evidence and then have belief. And I'm like, well, I've read 400 of these books and none of these people did that. They believed in themselves way before. Everybody around them is telling them they couldn't do what they're doing.
And all the data actually says you're right.
Exactly. Belief comes before ability,
100%.
Not after. I think that's very important. But what's fascinating is like, there's one thing where he's like in his mom's kitchen and there's like the Ireland's like, he's like cashing welfare checks. And I think he's in collections on some credit card bills. And he's just like, I'm going to be the champion of the world. He's saying all this the crazy stuff. But what he realized was just like, the value comes from the work and doing the work every day. And that's why he said, if you go to sleep on a win, you wake up with a loss. And then he made hundreds of $1 millions. Not judging anybody else. Supposedly he's got a very fierce drug habit, which kind of looks might be the case to me. And so it goes back to this quote tweet where I just quote tweeted Andrew Huberman, where it's just like mute the world and build your own. I just wake up every day. Like I really do think Patrick's probably right that I don't have like this master plan. I don't even seek points of leverage. I do all these things that I don't seek efficiency. I like no one else works on the podcast. Like they're like, why don't you hire an editor? Why don't you hire a researcher? It's just like, I like doing it. There's a great line from Charles Schultz, who's the founder of the guy that did Peanuts, remember? And grew up reading Charlie Brown and Snoopy. And he penciled every single comic strip. He wrote the stories. He did everything. He had this like thing in his will about like what happens to Peanuts after he dies. He wouldn't let anybody else continue it on. And then you have to publish. This is the last one I ever want published. Like he thought a lot about this, but he would give tours of like his studio. And I think he was like in his 70s then. And they're like, why don't you just like write a bunch of them? They were first like, why are you still doing this? Is the question. And then they're like, why don't you like batch them and then, take time off? And his answer to this was great. It's like, he didn't understand the question. It's like, why are you still doing this? He goes, you don't work all your life to do what you love to do, to not do it. And so my whole thing is like, I really do mute the world. Okay. I'll tell you an embarrassing story. This is embarrassing to me. So every once in a while, some of my friends have companies and they like just want me to like sit in on like meetings, like board meetings and stuff. And I'm not on any boards. I have no interest in doing that. I am fiercely interested in entrepreneurship and how they think about building businesses. And I look at this as like a way to learn. And so I was doing this the other day with two close friends of mine, and they were talking about acquiring a business in New York. Okay. And I was paying attention, but then they kept saying this name over and over again. And they kept saying Maduro. And again, I don't read the news. Okay. And again, because we were talking about New York, I was like, why do you guys keep bringing this up? And they're like, dude, did you not see, this is going to be real embarrassing. They're like, Trump kidnapped Maduro. I thought they meant, because we're talking about his business in New York, I thought they meant Mandami. I'm like, he kidnapped the mayor of New York City. Like, how did I not hear about this? Like, no, you idiot. The president of Venezuela, as if that was anything else.
More normal. Yeah.
I was like, I didn't know. They're like, I don't look at the news. I didn't know this. Now that's embarrassing. But my point being is just like, listen, the big stuff will get to me. If there's a war, if there's a pandemic, I'll hear about that. That will come down to me. But no, I think the worst thing I could ever do is think about who I get to meet or who's listening to the podcast. It's just like, hey, this is my retard maxing, to use Patrick's term. It's like I only think in 24 hours, literally. So it's like, what do I like to do? I like to wake up, work out. I like to read. Then I'll have lunch. Then I'll reread past highlights. Do that multiple days a week. At night, I usually go to dinner with the founder. All my friends are entrepreneurs. Do calls throughout the day, like not like meeting calls, like friendship calls with other smart people is another form of education. Once or twice a week, I sit down with a founder that I'm intensely interested in talking to. We record another podcast, and that's it. And then I'm like, oh, that day was pretty cool. I like that day. I'm going to do that day again tomorrow. And then I'll do it again the next day. I don't even know what today is. I assume it's a weekday. Could be Sunday. Don't know, because my schedule looks the same all the time. It's also very difficult for some relationships in my life. But like so no, I never think about anything. I just think about like podcasts to me is like, oh, these are miracles. I've learned so much from listening to podcasts. They're great tools for education. I hope I'm building something that makes somebody else's life better. If it's fascinating to me, I'm not, there's probably 10 million Davids out there. Me and you we've never met before today. We have almost the exact same interests. There's 10 million Cody and Davids out there, and they'll probably like this podcast too. That's it. There's no other grand plan. It's just like, oh, this is great. I like to learn all the time. And then I sit down and share what I learned.
Well, I think it's so cool. I mean, I think what keeps me up at night with this is, can you imagine what a tragedy it would be if there's going to be millions of people that listen to this across all the social channels, right? That's millions of people's hours. That's years in like a human collective life. And what if it sucked? What if it was not valuable to them? Like, that is a tragedy to do to people who have a very finite thing called time. And so I just want to thank you for being here. This was so useful. I am a huge fan of both of your podcasts.
Thank you.
They're not easy to make, so thank you for making them. It's David Senra is the new podcast.
Yep.
Founders Podcast is the longstanding podcast. And I will say also, you increasingly do incredible shorts now on Instagram too, for the attention deprived that need the 60-second spots. And that is Founders Podcast on Instagram, right?
Instagram. Instagram's the biggest channel there. Oh, so there's a real quick story there too, where like, I believe in like tiny teams, essentially mission driven, concentrated on like focused. This is like my framework for entrepreneurship. So pick a mission, be really concentrated on like your resources, time, money, energy, attention, all to that mission. Tiny teams of just A players. Because again, all I'm doing is reading the books and taking the ideas from the books and applying it to my own business, which is, hopefully the what the podcast served for other people as well. And Steve Jobs, like a tiny team of A players can run circles around a giant team of B and C players. So my shorts, which I like too, literally is one genius kid living in France.
Dude, they're all the same too.
I don't manage him. He was obsessed. I met him through this guy.
Let me guess. He's also white. He's like sub 30. He's probably like 26, 27.
He's in his early 20s.
Yeah.
But the funny part is,
and a little like slightly autistic and really obsessed with the game of video.
No, he is an obsessive person. But I met him through Blake Robbins, who Blake Robbins is an investor. He used to be at Benchmark. Now he's his own fund. But I think his Twitter bio says he like hangs out on the edge of the internet, and he finds like weirdly talented people. Yeah. And he's like, "Hey, will you meet this kid? He's in from Europe. He's in New York. He's obsessed with a single podcast, and it's yours." And I was just talking to the kid because I thought he was talented. I was like, "You should move to America." He was doing all this other way to make money that he wasn't passionate about. And I was like, "Just how much do you need? Like, what if you just made these shorts for me, right? How much you need?" Named his price. I was like, done. Didn't even negotiate with him. And now I'm helping him because he's going to be one of the greatest filmmakers, I think. He like mastered short form. Now he's making short movies. Then he wants to make like, he wants to be like Christopher Nolan and Steven Spielberg. And I was like, listen, I'll not to the degree that I can help you in any way. Like, you have been so helpful to me. Like, if I can make an introduction for you, I'd invest in you, and I don't even like investing. Like, I'll do whatever you can because you're so talented. Like, I just think about things in terms of people, but this also applies to like the reason that you want high quality people around you is I don't need to manage him. He makes them, he sends them to me. This is our workflow. I literally, and then like, I don't manage him at all. He sends them to me. I watch it. I'm like, I'd watch that. And if I like it, I post to the channels. And if I don't post it. And he's made, I don't know, like 200. And I probably haven't posted, I don't know, 5. Like I have a big backlog I need to post, but I'm talking about ones I didn't like. That's it. How much time did it take? I just identify a great person and name your price. And he named his price, and that's it. It just makes my life a lot easier. So,
well, this was an incredible podcast. And also I have to give you one more compliment, which is, do you know what we obsess on about you and your podcast?
No.
Your ad reads. They're the fucking best. And I like never thought I would like an ad read, but like whatever Ramp is paying you, they need to increase it because literally, do we not? I literally go, if this isn't David Senra level ad read, I'm not fucking reading it. Give me a new version. Then we go like 3 or 4 versions on it. We have our own. Yeah. It's not like copying your style, but meaning like the intent of it. Like you can just tell. And I think other people do this too, but I'm always like, is it coming? I think he's going to talk about savings. And then you sneak me and it's not it. Yeah. And then it's it.
Well, and again, this goes back to like the importance of concentration and focus. Because to me, it's like anything you hear on the podcast, whether it's an intro, an ad read, anything, a single word, it has to make sense. And so I appreciate you saying that, but like, it was just like, hey, since I don't work on anything else, I can spend a lot of time. So every single ad is custom to that actual episode. And I'll reference what's going on in the episode. They take a long time to make.
Totally.
But why wouldn't you do that? Like, I love what I do. I would want to listen. Again, this goes back to Stephen King, where he says, I'm not only the writer, I'm the first reader.
Yeah. Oh,
I edit the podcast. So I listen to every single, I'm the person that makes it, but also the first listener. Yeah. Why would I put into things that I don't want to hear? And to me, some of the podcast ads are so jarring. I'm like, oh, this is like, we were in this like beautiful flow of this conversation. It's just like, and then it's almost like the DJ like stopped the music.
100%. Yeah, that's how ours were. But then, because I listen to, and it's funny because I'll have new team members come and they'll say, well, why do you review every piece of content that goes out across Contrarian Thinking? I do. I have it's like a workflow. I review from every tweet to every email to every whatever. And they'll be like, well, somebody else could do that. And that horrifies me because it has my name and face on it and it's somebody else's time. But your ads are incredible and you've made me think about ads differently.
This is not a new idea. This is the beautiful thing. I literally have no original ideas and people are like, you shouldn't say that out loud. Why? Like every single person I read about is smarter than me. I don't feel bad about that. They are smarter than me. That idea the fact that I check everything and you check everything That was Steve Jobs. There's this great book I highly recommend everybody read. It's called Insanely Simple. It was the obsession that drove Apple's success. I think the guy's name is like Ken Siegel. He was Steve's ad guy. And he said every Wednesday, I think at 3:00, he had a marketing meeting. I could be wrong on the dates, but basically he said it didn't matter if it was a billboard in Times Square or one in rural Missouri. Nothing went out without Steve personally okaying every single piece of Apple marketing. So what you do when you care.
David Senra, you're the man.